Righto guys, welcome back. We are reconvening the dog control policy and bylaw hearing. We don't have any submitters today. Today we've got an opportunity for panel members to share some of their thoughts and for us to hear from staff on a couple of key issues. I'd like to start by thanking the staff. There's a huge amount of work that's gone into this policy and the drafting, and it's a really, really chunky piece of work. We know that it presents technical challenges for our staff. That's why we've got expert skills and policy writers, but the complexity of the drafting is one thing, but actually the polarising nature of this topic adds another whole dimension to it for us as elected members, because we are the ones that will be making the decision, and so we have to satisfy ourselves about our decision making. And I speak for all of my colleagues here, despite the time constraints today, we don't want to rush this. We want to know why we're making a decision on certain things and to make sure that we've got everything covered. You know, we always talk about wanting to engage the public in our processes. So they've come out en masse for this one, and there's a lot of time and effort have gone into their submissions from some really experienced and knowledgeable people, and we need to do them justice now by really considering the things that they've put up for us to think about. So we got to a point at the end of the day yesterday where we were all over the park. It's Aaron's wish today to try and get as many dog puns in as we can. Some of us were barking up different trees. Some of us were running around chasing our tails. And I think it's really important for us today to try and find a pathway to make our decision. Now, I'm not talking about a footpath or a shared path or a form path. I'm just talking about a pathway. What is it that we're doing today? I don't want to overthink it. What is our decision-making process? And I know we've got staff in the room, but we're going to hear from you shortly. But before you present to us, I would like you to hear from us a little bit, because I want you to ensure that we use your time productively today. And you talked to us about the issues that we want to hear from you from, because it's clear from where we landed yesterday that there are some things that we're all very clear about and we've got agreement about, and there's some things that are sticking points. So as chair, I'm proposing that we spend our time in the next hour and a half doing 4 things, okay? And the first 4 things is I want each of the panel members to identify what they think the high-level themes are that came out of yesterday. I'm not talking clause specific, I'm not talking to location specific, or there may be 1 or 2 exceptions, but we want to talk about themes, because that'll help direct staff as to where we are thinking and where we think the sticking points are. So that's the second issue. Is we're also, after we've spoken about themes, we're going to talk about where we think the sticking points are. What are we having a little bit of difficulty with? What are we undecided on at this stage? What do we need some more information on? We're then going to hear from staff on the key topics. And then I think the final point for us today is to make sure that we are agreeing on what the decision pathway is going to be. And this is about process. Where do we land today? What do we need to do next? And what do we need to do? Because it was apparent to me that yesterday that your deliberations report, as fantastic and comprehensive as it was, it didn't give us as panel members a framework for making our decision. It felt like there was just too much and we couldn't identify what and where the questions were and how we were going to reach our decision. So I think it's important today that at the end of the day, we all understand how it is we're going to reach that final decision. I don't know what the format is for that framework yet, but I'm hoping that by the end of today, we'll be reasonably clear on it. Can I just add two things I shared with my colleagues this morning. There was a bit of a breakthrough in my own thinking, and that was for 2 really essential elements. And one is that fear is subjective. You know, it might seem really obvious, but we heard some really compelling personal stories yesterday. And no matter how well behaved your dog is, if you've got a fear of dogs, you've got a fear of dogs. And so protecting their public is got to be a really key consideration. But the other thing for me that was really obvious this morning was putting a lens on, and this is what I encourage my colleagues to do today, put on the lens of being a new resident to Christchurch. You've got 2 preschoolers, you've got 2 dogs, you've got an elderly mother-in-law who's got some mobility issues. You want to go to our council website and you want to clearly see, where can I take my dog? What are the rules? Where can I go? Where can't I go? and when can I go there? So again, when it comes to the policy drafting, we need to be really clear. And a cheat sheet sounds like a really good idea. So we need to be able to formulate a cheat sheet at the end of this, because people aren't going to read the policy. I mean, as much, policy wonks, we love policy, but people don't read it. And that was an overwhelming fact, really. So that's enough from me. Where we're going to go and start with now is I want each of the panel members to we're going to go around in a circle, come up with the high level themes, and I want staff to take note of those themes before they present to us. After that, we're going to go around the circle again and we're going to talk about what are the sticking points that we've got, because we ask the staff to please identify and talk to those points to us, because that'll allow you to present uninterrupted. So Tina, I'm conscious that you need to finish presenting your report. We're going to let you do that, but please be mindful of what you're hearing from panel members in the next 5 minutes. Yep. So let's jump on to themes. Kick it off to my right to Aaron. What have we got at the top? High level.
Just like one overall theme.
Yeah, what are some of the themes that we're hearing? Just throw it around the room and brainstorm your observations from yesterday's submitters that you heard from reading all the submissions, and from reading the fantastic staff reports.
Well, one that stuck out for me quite early on was, because the question was asked by multiple people, is, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Good. And it came really clear from that it's, when it comes to dogs, it's the problem dog owners are the real problem.
Yeah, okay.
And the majority of the others are all good.
Let's not debate it. Let's just take it off the top of our head. So dogs aren't the problem. The owners are the problem. Is that a summary?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. Tyrone.
Yeah, the thing that I picked up on would sort of leverage off that, which is about improving education for dog owners.
Yeah, good one. Yep. Kelly?
The need for clarity, a bit what you touched on, people don't read policy. They want clarity, and I think maps are king. That people can look at maps and get clarity straight away. Yep. You could click on it and that's prohibited, this is fine.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Pauline?
Yeah, I think that we have to be careful that we're not making this bylaw over-prescriptive, and we're not making changes for the sake of it, when actually we haven't really got the data to actually give us the mandate to necessarily do that. I'm not saying we shouldn't make changes, but I think we have to be very aware of not ending up over-prescriptive and actually, what's that word? Reducing people's freedom to enjoy the dogs, and reducing the dogs' freedom to be their natural selves, which is really important to avoid causing those behavioural issues in dogs.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was a wee bit long.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think that highlights also to staff, just slightly off-piste, that it would be helpful if at the end of today, after we've identified the themes and some of the issues that we've got, that we have a very clear agreement and understanding about what's in scope and what's out of scope. But notwithstanding something being out of scope, the general feeling is that we'd like to be able to have some noting provisions about that. So we'll ask staff to do some work on that. I think one of the other issues that came up for me was there was a common theme about why can't we deputise our rangers? Why can't we use our park rangers a little bit more in the education? We know they're not there for dog control purposes, but if we've got staff that are there, I'm not saying it's an answer, but it was certainly a theme that came up yesterday for me. Second round, Aaron?
Yeah, that one would also, I think, apply to the parking unit as well. Like if they're out and about and they see something, if they've been deputised to deal with it as well. Even because most of the time it's education and warnings. So I'm not sure, Lionel can probably answer that later. He'd probably say that they already do, but or can or whatever, but or they can't for these reasons. But another overwhelming theme was, and I was educated on it being a dog person, was around the leash length. That it was very, very clear from pretty much every expert we had come in. Well, they all claim to be experts, so I believe them, that short leashing's just not good for dogs. And so allowing people to choose their length of leash, because I short leash, especially if I'm doing a pickup at school, that makes sense. I certainly wouldn't long leash. So there's times and places, but it should be going back to the owners. Once again, it'll only be the really bad ones, I think, that will
Yeah. Thanks.
get it wrong.
Tyrone?
Sorry, this is still general themes, is it?
Yeah, we'll just finish this round. Yep.
There was a lot of discussion around wildlife as well,
Yeah.
and protecting wildlife, and acknowledging that while dogs are not necessarily the greatest threat to wildlife, they are a threat, and that wildlife needs to be protected. Yeah.
Can I just add to that? There was some questions raised around all wildlife or protected wildlife or, seasonal stuff. Just,
Yeah, I mean, there's a theme there. To unpick
wildlife.
that theme is a little bit trickier.
yeah, sure. Kelly?
Yeah, I guess the other thing that's already been mentioned before, but bag dog owners and guardians are not really held to account enough, and good dog owners and guardians feel like they're unnecessarily restricted. So finding that balance is
Yep.
And potentially penalised.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else, Pauline?
The access to the water, the river in the
Yeah.
red zone. So I think we need clarity around that as well.
Yeah, we'll come to the things that we want a bit of clarity on in a minute. But access to water was a theme where people spoke about dogs enjoying water
Yeah.
and owners wanting their dogs to enjoy the water.
Vic, so the stats were given on dogs killing wildlife, which are they weren't in the top 5 ways that wildlife die, but it's the disruption. So that become really clear that dogs are really good disruptors of wildlife. And I think it goes back to the education thing that dog owners need to know that, hey, your dog might not be killing birds, but it's disrupting the nesting cycles and all that kind of thing. So I think that's the behaviour change we need to see around
Yeah,
that.
the godwits missing out on just 4 hours of
Food.
feeding.
Yeah, it means they can
Impact on
be
their
4K
travel.
short.
Yeah.
And they see the
Alaska.
coast of Alaska and hit the ocean.
Okay, so let's keep our focus. Well, I think it's reasonably clear. There's a couple of other outliers for me that I thought were themes yesterday, and one of those was there was quite a lot of comments around rubbish bins. I know it's out of scope, but it's one of the things that were mentioned. There was also people saying it ain't broke, don't fix it. What is the problem you're trying to fix? And what went along with that conversation was there's no data. Where's your evidential basis to make these changes? There were a number of people that commented on that. And there was a very clear theme that came out around the need for education of the public in general, as well as dog owners. And also I felt that there didn't appear to be any opposition to raising fees. Did you guys pick that up yesterday?
I'd agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
If we can justify
Yeah.
the reason.
Yeah.
And
So
also not very much. A lot of people said incremental would be okay.
yeah.
I'd like it.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, can I just add one other comment? Just allied to Councillor Kewen's comments about leashes, which is that mental health and well-being of dogs was raised a lot, and that kind of ties into the mental health and well-being of owners.
Yeah.
And so,
Going for a run with your dog.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, we can
Okay,
delve into that
so
a bit more as well.
before we move on to identifying and really nailing what are the sticking points we think we've got that we're going to need a little bit more information on and a bit more time, were there any other high-level themes that you want to mention? No. I mean, we can always come back. It's not a time to debate.
Just want to raise the spectre of dog parks. A lot of the people that I've heard and before this don't feel that there's enough dog parks, and the dog parks that do exist, it's kind of open season. It's quite unregulated, and people don't feel necessarily safe taking their particular dog to a dog park, which I found quite fascinating, considering that's where they're recommended to go.
Yeah, good one. Thanks. The other thing I forgot to mention just to my colleagues that this is being recorded, but it's not being live streamed. So that means you'll have to be on your best behaviour. So let's just I'm talking to you, Councillor Kewen. Let's have a whip around then for what we think are the sticking points, please. And then after that, we'll move on to hearing from Tina and hearing from the other staff, if that's okay. Aaron.
The first one for me would be that was overwhelming was the leash length. So short leashing seems unpopular. I think you have leashed areas and unleashed areas, and then we need to educate people on how they should be. And the ones that have gone and done the training have found out they know, but I think there's lots of other people that aren't aware of what you should be doing, where, and how you control your dog.
Okay,
But
so
if it's leashed, it's leashed, and I think the prescriptive length isn't always helpful.
sorry, a prescriptive length is helpful or unhelpful?
It can be unhelpful because, if lots of people are coming along, reel it in, keep it nice and close. If there's no one on the path, why do you need a really short leash?
Okay,
and the dog
so-
can't sniff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So-
it's clear direction. Has everybody agreed that the short leash is unhelpful? Is that oversimplifying it? Is that what you were hearing yesterday?
I think defining the short leash and long leash is a nonsense. I think just use the word leash.
And are we all in agreement with that?
As long as they're leashed in a leashed area,
Yeah.
then
And
if
that
someone's
allows-
still not, because then if it's all over the place, they don't have control of the dog. So someone could come up and say, hey, look, an officer could say, hey, do you realise that in this kind of environment you should really have your dog a lot closer for these reasons? And they're professionals, they know what they're doing.
So that allows the owner to exercise their own discretion about what sort of leash is appropriate for the environment that they're in, because not all footpaths are the same width. Not all,
Yeah.
Okay.
Bearing
But
in
I do
mind-
think going forward, we need to be, as a council, to be the most dog-friendly council in the country. We need to
yeah.
be
Thank you.
investing in education and little videos and all that kind of thing that I think nearly every dog owner would look at. They would
Okay.
kind of
Let's
buy
try.
into it.
Yeah, really good points. Let's try and keep the focus then on the sticking points. So
So
the
can I
length of the leash is the sticking point.
Can I just add to that, Victoria, that even if a dog's on a leash, whether it's long or short, it still has to be under effective control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
Good point.
That's the over.
Yeah,
That's
that's the overarching.
Okay. Yep. Councillor Fields, sticking point.
I think there's a little bit of confusion, maybe that's the wrong word, but just around the Littleton Rec Ground.
Yep.
Yeah,
Acknowledged.
just that. Yeah,
Needs a bit more
proposals.
exploration.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, just taking up that theme, sports parks, the definition, I think, needs to be super clear, because if you look at a huge park like Burnside Park, there are vast tracts of it that aren't actual playing fields. And I think there'll be confusion there. People will think, I've got to have my dog leashed all the time. So I think we need a bit of care in explaining
one.
that.
Pauline?
Formed paths. I think they were very leading to quite a lot of confusion.
Formed track.
Leashed on the track or the path.
Yep.
And 2 centimetres off, no, blah, blah. And I think we should maybe think about giving us advice about removing those out of it.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll wrap up at the end of today with identifying the areas that we think we need a little bit more advice on. But I think that's a good idea. One of the issues for me is there was Latimer Square and how do I pronounce that?
Roller Park.
Roller Park. I think there's some disagreement and some confusion around that, and we may need to have look a bit closer at that. Thanks.
Well, I think particularly in the light of we will be potentially bringing in the Avon Loop as a off the leash. So I don't think we need Aurora Park in Latimer Square.
Okay.
Just to clarify, what was
Necessarily.
the concern there?
I just think the concern is that I don't think we're all agreed on it. We're unlikely to reach agreement on it with the information that we've got at the moment, and we need to look a bit closer at it. Yeah, and the conversation and the round and the totality about where are the other unleashed areas in the central city or near the central city. So let's not look at that issue in isolation. Let's just broaden the conversation a little bit to help us make a decision as a panel on that particular one. And I think the number of dogs is also a sticking point. We heard a lot from people saying it depends on the size of the dog, the behaviour of the dog, the size of the person, the ability of them to control their dogs, and they're not all one and the same. So I think we need to spend a bit of time looking at that one.
What's the effective control
Yeah.
term again?
Yeah.
Like if someone's got 20 dogs, like the guy that used to walk through town, and they were all unleashed, or maybe one or two were leashed, and he had effective control over them,
There's a problem.
well, there is no problem. But other people can have one and got no control.
Yeah, okay. Second round, anything else identified as sticking points?
Maybe around our information, like mapping, that we need clear interactive maps. So if we're going to be that great dog city, you got to be able to go to the council website, and in the information there's mapping for the whole city, and you should be able to just scroll over and go, yep, cool, that's those. And then the other one is our rules on there need to be super simple as well. So because they're not going to read policy, they're not what do you call them, wonks?
Policy wonk.
Policy wonk.
No
Okay,
disrespect,
well I hope I never
policy
meet
wonk,
one.
but one myself.
But the people just want really simple, easy
Sure.
to use, so you can see the rules and then you can find where to go. And mapping is a good way to do that. And the part of having some areas or parks in each ward that are dog free is I think it's a really positive way forward, because it's a win-win.
It recognises that some people are just absolutely scared of dogs, regardless of how well behaved they are.
Absolutely, and it also stops that confrontation from people with dogs, especially the really friendly ones that still want to rush up to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
That they don't end up in that situation
Yeah.
either. So.
Thanks, Aaron. Tyrone, anything else on the sticking point?
Oh, just something that Aaron said actually, just about the maps, and just I sort of feel like that there's all the different places that you can go to get information on dogs and where to walk dogs across our website have not been reconciled fully. Like that you've just got these different areas, and obviously we have different teams at council, and like these things all need to line up. Everything needs to line up, and I just feel like that there's been, I could be wrong.
Yep.
But I just feel like there's been a bit of a gap there.
Okay.
One-stop shop.
Aaron? Kelly?
Yeah, just around the clarity as to the rules in the red zone. I think that needs to be really clear in a pictorial way.
Yep.
It's a vast area. It's got a lot of important ecological values, and I think if people understand that and can see it in its whole, then they can use that 200 hectares of grassed area. Little sticking point with that is the length of the grass. Are we keeping it short enough to protect little dogs?
And confusion around mown grass and long mown grass and short mown grass.
And budgets to actually do that. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Pauline, anything else?
I think that was the only one I had to add as well. And I'm thinking that we've got the indicative map here. It does not include Horseshoe Lake Reserve, Anzac Drive, Cockayne or Bexley Wetland. And maybe it should just have those attached, because they're kind of adjacent anyway. And so make just clarity again for people to see easily. So we could have one map that's colour coded, prohibited all the time, one colour, leashed requirement, one colour.
Keep it simple.
Bit more work. Green for go.
Yeah. So following simple.
Simplification. Did we mention access to water?
Yes.
Okay, we brought that one up. Owners wanting to have places to take the dogs. Look, I think we could go round and round the park, a lot more on that one. But I think we'll stop it at that, and just thank you to the staff that are in the room you've had to put up with us having these conversations. I know you're here to present to us, but as panel members, it's really important that we have the opportunity to share these thoughts, to give you some direction, and to do it in a transparent and open way.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to raise the steadfast reserve as well. I'm just not quite clear on what the.
Sure.
We've had some submitters. I mean, further up the hill, it seems reasonable to be able to have dogs off a leash and under effective control. Maybe not down on the lower slopes where plantings are occurring and that sort of stuff. So we just got to tease that out a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for that.
You also needed clarity on that Blacks Point to Diamond Harbour walkway, the coastal
Coastal.
walk that's up the top of the hill, and then as opposed to around the bottom, that no one walks down there anyway.
We talked about shared tracks though, didn't we? So we probably need to,
Formed track.
I mean,
that-
not
Form
shared tracks,
paths.
form tracks,
Form
sorry.
track, so that would fall under that. Cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
at this
so
stage.
Just since we're being ward specific, and this is only really applies to my ward because I'm the only one with an airport. But the
Incorrect.
having trying to kill two birds with one stone, excuse the pun, is the encouraging areas around the airport where there might be wetlands where we don't want bird life. It should be places where we encourage people to take dogs, especially noisy dogs and that kind of thing. So having the opposite effect too. Protecting the
dogs.
wildlife on one side of town, like the estuary, is a no-brainer. But the areas in my ward where you don't want bird life, have more dog life
yeah, okay.
type
Oh, I
thing.
don't know. I think you're turning this into a dog's breakfast.
Okay.
I think that would be a really appropriate point to
Well, she let me
stop.
off the leash.
And
so-
this is what happens when you get off the leash. Let's hear from Tina, and I think it would be helpful to you if we let you just go right through your presentation, and we'll hold our questions to the end, because otherwise we're going to go round and round the park.
This is from where we got to yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for just
stuff
persevering
issue.
with us. We got through that this morning, but I hope it helps to give you some indication of where we're at,
It's
or not.
it's really helpful to get a steer from the panel on the direction that you're thinking about taking. We anticipated a number of the conflict areas and issues that you've raised this morning, and a lot of them being covered in the staff advice for deliberations report. What we've got for you today, we don't have a presentation, but we thought that you might like to work through some of the decisions that need to be made to move this along. And we have the this table, which I think you all have a copy of. This is just follows the headings that are in the staff advice deliberations report, and we have a lot of staff here today who can talk about area specific restrictions, particularly the ones in the second part of that first page, the specific areas. So the general areas, some of those are sticking points, so perhaps we could leave those, and while we've got staff in the room, we could cover those more specific areas. So I think we can work through that document if that's helpful for members. We have compiled in there the views from submitters, the current status of things, what we've proposed, and then we've got staff recommendations for you. So you'll appreciate that that's the submitters that you heard from, a fewer than 5% of submitters. So we've reflected the full range of submission views in this document in summary form to help you with your decision making.
Okay, to clarify, you're going to go through your report. Is that right?
Or this.
Which one are you going through? Are you going through the table?
The
Or are you going through
table-
your report?
Well, the table is a summary of what's in the report, so
Okay.
you can work your way through, or you can pick off bits of interest if that's preferable, and we can get the staff to help you with the area specific issues.
Yeah,
Alright.
sure.
Can you tick them off?
Sure.
So you can utilize this document, or you have it online, and this report starts on page.
So just checking, we've got other staff in the room. What's
103.
their intention today? When do they think that they're going to be on? Or are they just observing? What's the rule? What's the go here?
We were anticipating getting a steer from the panel on what you would like to do. We don't have particular presentations or anything prepared. We thought that you may like to ask questions as we go through. So, for example, we've got Zane from the Red Zone. We've got Robbie, who's got a lot of the areas to the north where we had a lot of submissions, like Sticksmill Conservation Reserve and the Groins. We've got Andrew Crossland that can answer any of your questions on any of the stormwater areas, the estuary, any of the protections that we're putting in place for wildlife reasons. And we've got Paul Devlin, who can answer any of the questions around the Port Hills and Banks Peninsula areas, including some that have been raised. And then we've got other park staff as well who can answer any of the broader questions as they come up. Does that work as an approach?
I wonder also from the policy perspective, we'd really like you guys to not be backwards and coming forwards in terms of identifying you know, if we're going off on a tangent saying we want to do something, you know, you need to be able to say that's a really complex issue. We can't resolve it today. Let's just park that. Or you guys are really heading down the wrong track. You know, we would want your expert advice and policy as well.
So we need to settle on sort of the general direction that you're taking, but what we need at the end result of this is pinned down wording that can go back to council for
Okay, but-
recommendation that they can agree to.
So today we're aiming to get the general direction. I don't want to end up in a free-for-all wordsmithing today, because I don't think that that's productive use of our time.
What I'm saying is if we've got your direction, we can do that drafting
Okay.
and bring it back to you.
Okay, so we're
and then
clear
you
on
can
that?
finalise
Yep.
it.
And if you think we're getting too specific and starting to wordsmith, can you just stop us?
Okay.
Thanks.
These issues that we've got here are not in any sort of priority order. They're just in the order that the analysis came through in. So the first couple of those central city areas, so we touched on those the other day. So this analysis starts on page 15 of the report that you've got. And this was the general concept of lifting the leashing requirement in 3 areas in the central city. The whole of the central city is currently leashed. We propose lifting it in Raora Park, in Latimer Square, and in a section of the Avon Loop. It might be helpful for this if we go to the parks map just to look at these areas. So does anyone want clarification on where Raora Park is, or Latimer Square, or the Avon Loop? So that is these 5 blocks here. They run just south of Margaret Mahi Playground. The first block of it is the pump track, and then they run right through until Litchfield Street. And then, and then Latimer Square is just beside it. And then, I keep doing that, sorry. I'll stop doing that. And then the Avon Loop, of course, is over here, further, this area here. So at the moment in the central city, the whole area is leashed. People can use Hagley Park as an unleashed exercise area, but otherwise between the 4 abs, it's leashed. And so we were proposing lifting it in a few areas. We got submissions from people saying this is a great idea, we definitely need some unleashed areas, and we got submissions from people living in the area saying we're really concerned about the safety of having unleashed dogs in these areas where people use the space, and the spaces are quite small.
Proximity then between Raora Park and Latimer Square, because they look really close together to me.
Very close together. No, I've just lost where they are. I've gone too far north. Hold on.
We lifted on Raora Park and we
There you go.
leave
There.
Latimer Square leashed.
And then, so they're right next to each other. But we asked park staff to go through
long.
and look at all of the options in the central city and the green space that we have. One of the reasons we put leashing over the whole central city is that many of the central city parks are very small and not appropriate for unleashed dogs. These 3 spaces were identified as possibilities, and we thought we'll see what the public thinks about that. We've got mixed views that have come back. There was no clear leaning in submissions in any particular direction. It was mixed.
So do you want to steer from us now as individuals?
Could park staff just comment, Tina? Sorry.
Yeah, sure, Al.
With the development of Takaha, we feel like Latimer Square being too proximal to increased activity, we might substitute Cramner Square for that, because it's currently used with a lot of dog
We steered
owners.
away from Cranmer Square because of the schools there.
And the proximity to Hagley Park where you can be off leash. My read of the room is that we had concerns around Latimer being unleashed
to the road
because
as well.
of close to the roads, close to increased pedestrian proximity to Kaha.
It is crisscrossed with parks,
Sorry?
it's crisscrossed with paths as well.
Crisscross with paths, a lot of it. Where are we at?
If the Avon Loop allows off leashing, and then you've got Hagley and Avon, that's really good servicing in the inner city, and then we can always address it later on if it becomes an issue. But that's 2 really good off-leashing areas.
So have we got a general agreement then, having listened to the submissions, and particularly the submitter from the group of partners?
Worcester Body Corporate.
Body corporate, because actually, you know, we're trying to encourage people to live in the city, and people who don't have dogs need to exercise too, and they want to be able to have parks, and a lot of these parks also have exercise groups and all sorts of things in them, and they don't want dogs running through them. Is the general feeling of the panel that we don't lift the leashing requirement on Latimer Square?
Yes.
Yep. Yep. Kelly? Yep. Yep. Is that helpful?
Yes, and Raora as well.
Well, no, let's have a conversation on Aurora, please. Can you pull it up again for me? I need to see how wide it is.
I'm just a wee bit
30
worried
me-
about
30
Aurora
metres
because
wide?
of the number of scooters and people on bikes that would sort of whiz through there.
It's the walking.
Yeah, I'm interested in people's thoughts on that.
Both sides, yeah.
So it's a narrow strip of green space.
It's only
part of the
30
old green
metres, I
frame.
think.
But
It's
the
not a large
scooters don't
area.
go through, that's the grass bit. The scooters
It's the
go
grass
on
bit.
Boulevard next to it. Yeah.
But just on the edge.
Seen the budget for building it, Ruth?
Yeah.
I think it was 23 million.
I think
That
for
part.
clarity,
It's not
Aurora
buying the
being
land.
right in the middle of town, it's better to say just keep your dog on a leash because that's what the general overlay is for the central city, and I think it'd be confusing to have that.
Can I see then, if you're in one of the properties in that east frame there, where we're trying to encourage people to live, how far is it from there to go to an unleashed area for your dog, please?
Yeah,
You've got to go all the way over to Hagley Park, or you've got to go up into the Avon Loop. So
But neither of those are very far. They're very close.
There are a number of blocks, 5 blocks.
Yeah.
Just checking, when you say Avon Loop, is it all that greyed out area?
The
which
Avon
is-
Loop is, sorry, I was in the wrong place. The
Which is
Avon
the-
Loop is this particular area here, so it's just north of Kilmore Street. It's red zone land. It's open space next to the river.
And it goes right round to.
yeah.
But the actual
You
Avon
walk
Loop
right
part
round
is
it
here.
and then end up at Pomeroy.
can I
From that
s-
densely
Palms.
populated area, it'd be an 8 to 12 minute walk, depending on your pace, and you could jog it in under 5 or 6 if you've got a reasonable, or if your dog's pulling you.
can I just suggest, to keep us moving on, is that we just park that now? I actually want to go and get a visual. I want to go
Okay.
and physically be there and see it. And if any other panel members want to do that, I encourage you to do that. Can we just park that for now?
Yep.
Yep. But we've got agreement on Latimer, and we've got agreement on lifting the leashing requirements in the Avon Loop. Yep.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
I mean, I'm prepared to change my mind on Aurora. Because it would. So that's what you were proposing was
It'd be
lifting the
leashed.
Yeah. I mean,
See,
it
I'm
would be
actually
handy
t-
for some people who don't have much time. You know, they want to give their dog a little run in the centre of the city. Everyone knows it. You know.
Yeah, if it's under effective control, I'm tending towards lifting the leashing requirement on Aurora. But I just want to park it for now and come back to it.
Well, here's a question. Can we do it for a trial period? So you do it and it can be undone if it's a problem.
I don't think
The
so.
way that the law works doesn't allow us to do that. We can't do temporary things. We have to state explicitly what land is requiring a leash and what isn't.
Right. Okay.
It's a difficulty with the Act, and it comes up often, but we have to work with what
Yeah.
we've got.
We've got a lot to get through today. Let's just park that one for now and
Go and have a look.
have a look. Come back to it either later today or when we come back next time. But I think we've made some progress.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was going to do
gonna be a long day.
a leap forward and then a step backwards here.
Sideways.
So we've got
sideways.
the Avon Loop, and we're going to come back to that slightly around the red zone stuff. But the Botanic Gardens was also raised. It's currently a prohibited area. We didn't propose any changes at all. We have a strong recommendation not to alter that requirement.
Yeah, you've
because
got
there
agreement from all of us on
Okay,
that.
good. So we won't need to cover that
Yeah,
one.
no
That's
one
good.
raised it.
So
as a
what we
problem.
were doing here is we were acknowledging the issues raised by submitters. So that's what's formed the structure here. And
Yeah,
there were
sure.
a cluster
Thank
there,
you.
So that's good. So the Atakura Avon River Corridor, the red zone. So this is covered in page 18 to 22 of this document. And the reason that I mentioned the Avon Loop is because when we talked about lifting the leashing requirement in the central city, it was because we were thinking about that in the central city leashed area, but actually that land is part of the Avon River Corridor. So we want that to have the same requirements on it that the rest of the Avon River Corridor has for consistency. So that would be unleashed in the grassed area, which is what we want. So it's a place you can exercise your dog, but leashed on the pathways and leashed in the planted areas and wet areas. So there's a lot of planting that's gone on along the riverbank there. So that is included in your discussion of the red zone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thoughts?
Well, is it going to be clear to communicate that?
We haven't done mapping, so at the moment you will have seen that we have the current dog control map. That's what we had up on screen before. That shows the current restrictions and rules in the current bylaw. We will redo this map once all of these are settled down. You can appreciate with 167 areas, there's a lot of mapping that needs to be done, so it takes a long time. So we didn't put a map as part of the consultation. We'll do that once this process is completed. And so the
Tina,
red zone will be mapped as
what's
part of
that
that.
third one down, prohibited bracket leashed? And then
That's-
the other one leashed. So
So on some of these bits of land, we have, this is the principle that we have of putting in restrictions in place only where necessary. So some areas we might say we don't want dogs in this area, but dogs are okay in this area if they're leashed. Some of those areas, for example, will have you can take your dog there as long as it's leashed on the pathway, but in the other areas we don't want dogs because we're trying to protect wildlife or for other reasons. So this map
it's awful.
is a demonstration of what is in the policy. So if you
Yeah.
click on any of these words, any of these shapes, sorry, you'll get the words that are in the policy.
I wonder if we could,
Really unclear because you've got prohibited, leashed,
Yeah.
leashed on path, leashed under control.
Yes, but if you click on the area, you see what that
Yeah,
applies
and then
to.
also the colours are too similar. But anyway, we can get into
Yeah,
it.
I think one
I
of the
wonder if we
suggestions
could-
has to be make everything clearer was one of
The
the
maps.
overriding.
So the terminology and the
since we've got
clarity.
Zane in the room, maybe we could hear from him about the Takaro
Thank you,
River
Kelly.
corridor.
Do you want your slide back?
as well.
I'm just,
The dog box, Zane.
Zane's prepared some slides. I'm just going to send them to staff to put on screen. 'cause it's a
Awesome, thanks, welcome.
Got it. They're not particularly fancy slides. It's just more me anticipating questions, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's easier to show rather than.
Zane, we've been talking a lot about dogs in the on the water, on the stop banks. You know, are there any? Would there be any provision anywhere for dogs to be in the water?
Near the central
And
city.
perhaps you could comment on the length of the grass and how often it is mowed in those grassed areas. Those are the sort of things that we were debating.
100%. And I've got pictures that can demonstrate that it isn't actually as complicated as it may read. In terms of
Good.
dogs and water access, again, really complicated issue. I think that there's discussions around water quality and dog welfare that need to happen potentially. Is it healthy for dogs to be in the river? But then also to have a dog get into the river, it needs to be moving through some pretty sensitive habitats. So, but again, I can sort of use some data to tell a story.
Sure.
New teams.
Oh, sorry.
So, I'm also not sure about the cultural implications of having dogs in water. So,
Zane, what about if the dogs could only access the water from landings?
my understanding is that there will be a leashing requirement at landings.
Yes,
So,
and that's sensible, but you could let the
Yeah.
dog off to go in the water.
yeah,
Would that work as a kind of entry point only, rather than going through sensitive sites or?
I potentially see that dog presence being a bottleneck to the ecology of the river. So, for example, if we have a landing in the lower reach of the river and we've got frequent dogs access, that could prevent birds, water birds, stuff like that moving up the river. Andrew's probably better commenting around that than me.
The current situation, though, dogs can go into the river now,
It's a free for all.
and
Yeah.
are they?
Is it a problem?
I don't see dogs in the river that
I
often.
don't think a lot of people let them go in anyway.
And anecdotally, we've had dogs reports come through our ticketing system of dogs having cyanobacteria poisoning, which is always quite distressing for us as staff to go, "Is something wrong?" So I think it's a complicated topic on multiple levels.
Well, I think that where we're coming from in this panel is actually giving dog owners discretion over that stuff, and but
Yep.
we balance off the ecology of the environment So not having free access to the river everywhere, maybe the landings, and I don't think it's going to open the floodgates for all dogs to be diving into the water.
Yeah, and I guess the analogy, you know, the closest way to look at it currently would be, what would the effect of dogs at the landing on the terraces be? So, similar environment, similar forecast of population, people using it.
It's
Oh,
banned there,
lot
isn't it?
more people there though, but we're talking about the red zone here, aren't we?
Yeah, it's pretty
Oh
popular.
yeah, is your dog? Hang on. So, but out here at the, and you're allowed your dog in the river here, or is it unclear?
I don't believe there's any restrictions on having the dog in the river.
Hmm.
So again, under effective control applies everywhere unless there's a specific limitation.
Okay, so if a new person to Christchurch jumped on our website and said, where can I take my dog into the water? What do they see? How do they know where they can take their dog into the water?
They have to read a little bit of information around that the default is under effective control and off leash, and that there's only restrictions on those coloured areas on the map.
Or the central city, there is a restriction of leashed, isn't there?
Yes, sorry, in the central city, the whole area is leash, which includes the river because it's the whole area.
Okay.
So there's a specific restriction in that area.
So you cannot take your dog in the river in the central city. Is that what I've heard? Unless it's on a leash.
Yes.
Gets it out easier.
Yeah.
So if that's what the current policy setting is, do we need to change it? And is there a problem we need to fix? Is there a problem we need to fix with this? I'm not hearing that there is.
I've been kayaking down the river for 25 years. I don't think I've ever seen a dog in the river
No.
anywhere.
Okay.
And yet I know people that occasionally their dog will get in the river, not very often, and then that gets out again. So it's sort of like, do we want to restrict those people from allowing their dog to get in every now and then? I don't know.
So where we landed, there isn't a problem we need to fix with dogs in waters. I can see Rupert shaking his head over there and I'm calling him out.
Yeah, I don't believe there's a problem. We haven't experienced anything like that in the central city whatsoever since I've been involved in that.
So let's not draw attention to it. Is that?
Yeah, so where people do take their dog into the river is, and it's not a problem because you see it often, is down by Ice Cream Charlie. So at
Down by where?
Ice Cream Charlie, Victoria Square,
Oh, yeah.
where
Got the
Vanilla Ice
cobbles.
is.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got the cobbles. So
Oh,
that's where people used to take their horses in
Yeah.
for drinking and cooling off, blah, blah. And people still do it with dogs, and it's not a problem. Well, I've never seen it be a problem. Have you had any reports? No. So no problem.
Okay, so
I'm interested in Zane's thoughts on that.
I was going to say, prior to being in the red zone, I was in Central City, managing the gardens there, and we never had noticed any issues. So
okay. So now I need to clarify. Are you proposing to change a policy setting around dogs on water? This is a question to you, Tina.
Oh, well, the proposal is to limit dogs to those wet areas and the wetland areas as well because of bird life. But Zane, you have forming a different view now?
no,
Okay.
no.
Should we, sorry, we've organised our tech issues now, and
Yeah, cool.
this is the slides that Zane prepared to help you get your heads around it.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just sort of show you some of the logic behind the process. So the map that you see here is the red zone, and the colours that you see in the locations are the incidents that we have reports around dog issues. So you can see that where we have more people showing up, more people, confluences of roads and the rivers, is naturally where we're having more reported dog issues. These are typically where people have close access to the water, where people are arriving, parking up and entering the park. So we've got issues immediately around how people are managing getting in and out of their vehicles and entering the space, where the dog leashing is just currently under effective control. When what I've also done here is I've taken each incident and plotted it on the map sorry, it's a little bit small, but I've split it into two categories. There's squares and there is circles on there. Squares represent,
Can we have this sent to us so we can see it on our screens, please? It's too hard, it's too small to see.
Why
Is
do
it-
we always use just shades of one colour?
yes. What we have though is when you get a copy of it that you can look at a bit better. Squares represent reports of dog aggression, so that consists of attacks, rushing, and then the circles are, reports of dogs not being under effective control. There is some misleading information in here, and that's I've also plotted reports of dead animals. So what you'll see is that we get a lot of reports of dog aggression around the hotspots of dog aggression. But then we also see a lot of dead animals showing up around those places, indicating that there's potentially a problem going on.
What sort of animals?
It's all bird related. These are not specifically associated with dogs, the incidences, and there's not really any way for us, even when we're showing up on the ground to deal with the animal, to determine on the fly whether it's a direct cause of a dog attack. What we can do though is look at where we're seeing it happen, and it's around the river almost exclusively. It's around waterways. So what that sort of highlights is that the ecology of the river is already under an incredible amount of stress, and therefore if we've got negative, poor dog control around this area, is that going to add to that stress? That's what that essentially illustrates, and that's 900 incidences in 5 years.
905 years. Did you
Yeah.
say? 200.
The logic behind sort of talking about having long grass, short grass, which I'll show you pictures of in a second, is that the red zone's changing rapidly. I don't think any of us can really predict what it's going to look like in 10 years, but it's pretty resource intensive. And our ability to navigate and change this policy just can't keep up with that. Not being able to come up with a novel way to manage dog control in the space would severely limit our ability to actually get the ecological processes kick-started and underway during my generation. As Kelly said, it can be pretty challenging to keep the grass cut all the time, and we have got areas where we've let the grass grow, and keeping dogs out of those spaces has multiple safety reasons. We've had dogs getting into litter, and their owners reporting they've had to undergo surgery for bowel perforations. We regularly get, it's not a problem unique to the red zone, but grass seed injuries. There's a lot of surface water showing up in areas of long grass, which is one of the reasons we can't mow them. They typically attract birds. Birds do their thing in the water, not necessarily healthy for dogs. But then also with the way that we're seeing the wider Canterbury landscape change, there's also increased number of parasites living out there, so specifically ticks, which I think we've started to see some issues in parks as well.
And where are the ticks coming from?
So talking with Manaaki Whenua, the theory is that because we're irrigating so much more of the Canterbury Plains now, and we're seeing an increase in temperature, they've been able to sort of migrate down from the Nelson region where they previously were. So
it's a couple of hard winters.
Yeah, don't really see them anymore though either. But the increases in humidity from the Canterbury Plains being transported with stock.
Right.
Yeah. And then naturally they move into other favourable areas. So, but they're not only horrible to deal with when you've got a dog covered in ticks.
So they're not just animal to animal? I thought they are.
No,
they get them
no,
from
no.
the-
They
from
live
the
in the
grass.
environment,
Right.
and they
okay.
latch on.
This is the Australian one.
we've got native ticks as well. I'm not actually sure on the entomology of them completely, but I've only personally ever had issues with them with my dogs when visiting the North Island. So, but it's something that's going to start happening more often. The other sort of idea around the long grass prohibition is it's kind of a soft introduction to the change of the red zone. You know, there's a lot of things happening over time, and by being able to let the grass grow in a space that we're intending to carry out restoration activities means that we can let the land rest a wee bit, give people the cue that, hey, your dog's not going to be allowed in here after a season's growth, and not have to try and trigger a bylaw change to say that you're not allowed in here anymore. And then it also allows us to start managing the space more sympathetically. So as we see wetlands naturally forming, which every year it's getting wetter, we can then go, cool, we're not mowing in here. We know this is just going to naturally turn into a ecological space of higher value. And we don't have to worry as much as dogs and other pests getting in there. And so I think more specifically along the river as well is where we're trying to actively reduce the intensity of maintenance along the river. So not mowing hard down to the banks. It's a part of the management plan. And so it reduces the confusion around that as well. To give you an idea of, you know, the grass, not grass, mowing grass, path, and all that sort of thing. The top left is an area where has been planted out. There is an old road, but the grass is long, so naturally you should have your dog on a leash in there. On the right-hand side, it's mown. That's probably 2 weeks after it being mown. Old road, surrounded by a mown area. It's dogs under effective control. Down the bottom is where it's particularly questionable. You've got long grass and mown grass, but long grass is prohibited. If you can't keep your dog out of there, then it's probably not under effective control. So does that create more questions or does it answer?
You had a question?
Yeah, do you see instances of where people are walking through, say that bottom picture, where the dogs do go into the long grass?
Not really, and it's we do and we don't. So there's examples which are currently less ecologically sensitive, like Darlington Landing, Darlington Forest, where we've planted, and people naturally do form pathways through there. But it would be nice to think that in 10, 15 years' time, we're actually getting more ground birds in that space. But one example of where we might see something like that is over towards Horseshoe Lake, where there's a large area of unmown. There's existing roads, and people do just their dogs run off into it, and you see pookie go flushing out. But we've also had dogs in that space that their owners have let us know that there's been an object that the dogs run into, and it's resulted in stitches and that sort of thing.
And just in terms of, we've seen the stat that there's the red zone 600 hectares, there's 200 hectares, which is mown grass. Over the next sort of 5 years, what are you expecting that 200 hectares to be in terms of?
Probably $1 million question, to be honest.
Yeah,
$1 million maintenance question.
A ballpark sort of guess.
Yeah.
Half that, maybe?
In how long?
5 years?
5 years. I would be very surprised if we were mowing less than 100, 150 hectares in that year's time. Based on the last 5 years, we've gone from mowing close to 300 hectares to close to 200 hectares.
Yeah.
What we're doing is intentionally mowing areas more frequently where we're seeing people use them more. And that's what we'd hope, is that people are naturally attracted to those spaces where their dogs can run free and not feel enclosed in a space where that might provoke aggression.
Yeah, can I just try and put a bit of a wedge in this, because we've got a lot to get through.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest we park it. and we come back to this, and I'd encourage all the panel members to actually get out in the field and go and have a look at this and understand where we are and where we are in proximity to houses and what's around and how's it being used. And I think we can come back to it. But it's let's just flag this up as a sticking point, and we can't give you, the panel's unable to give you any clear direction today. Thank you for that. Thank you for your time. That's helpful. Is that all right, panel members? Or
I don't disagree with the staff's position on this, and I think with signage, and if we delve into an education program, people will understand. And once again, majority of good dog owners will go along with it, because you don't want dog seeds in your dog either.
Yeah,
and
I
that's
agree.
what long grass is. So it's just dogs. It's just a big vet bill waiting to happen.
I'd just like a bit of an opportunity to let that percolate and to reread a bit of stuff and to do a site visit and to come back to it. I'm just not ready to land anywhere on it yet.
Can I jump in as well, just to draw your attention to what submitters had to say? So we got 58% of people supported this proposal. We had some people that were opposed to it. A lot of people were really keen on supporting wildlife. We had some concerns raised from submitters about things like the old roads and whether the leashing on roads rule that applies where does traffic should apply. And we've got some suggestions for you for changes where we can improve it in this document.
I think
So-
we
so we've
agree
taken-
to some of those changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the wildlife thing is a bit controversial because how much of that is attributed to dogs, we don't know. So
Is
that
it cats?
becomes difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, let's just. I think we've got general agreement around the tweak that you've made about the roads. Are we all clear on that bit?
Yeah.
But for the rest of it, let's just park it, please. Toro, anything else? Have I missed something?
No,
No.
I think
Okay.
you're all over it. Madam Chair.
Like a mad dog.
Having a conversation about hedgehogs over here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Bad.
So, Tina, off you go.
The next thing on the list is Te Ihitai Avon Heathcote Estuary.
Oh, I think I speak for all my colleagues here. We're
I think that's a
slam dunk.
We're all on board.
We're all on board. Oh, thanks.
The
Is there a dog phrase
What
we
was
can
the
use for
minor
that?
change?
the change.
The minor change you got no.
Oh, that's. I'll just check. Page number. Oh, it was in the policy, you'll see that it always states the area of land, what the dog control status is, and then it has the reason for that dog control status. And the description that we'd used was about birds being on the shoreline, and we've added in. Actually, can't see where it's added in.
Page of your report, Tina.
24. Oh, sorry. We'd put that the prohibited area includes the shoreline where birds nest and tidal areas where they feed, but we were just going to add in the words roost and molt and nest because they're all important, because we had some submitters say that we should put seasonal restrictions in place, and we wanted to make it clear that this is a year-round problem. It's not restricted to a specific time of year, just to help with education.
That's easy.
Oh,
She's got a number on there.
One,
So
one,
24 of her report.
one,
was
two,
125.
five. That's
Yeah, sorry, the page numbers are doubled. Yep, 125 of your agenda and 24 of the document.
be good if you could call them both out. That'd be great.
Yep. Okay, can we move on?
So Tukuru, wetlands and stormwater areas was the next proposal. So this is a sort of a double thing. One is that we asked one of our key questions to say, do you broadly support regulating in stormwater areas? And we got a lot of good feedback on that. And then we proposed specific restrictions and named stormwater areas in response to that. So Tukuru is one, that's one of the bigger ones. And then there's a number of other drainage basins and other areas where we've proposed similar restrictions, and they've been assessed in terms of wildlife value. So some are prohibited completely, and some are a mixture of prohibited and wet areas, under effective control on grass, and leashed on pathways.
Could you just remind me then, for those who were opposed to this, what were their main reasons?
People didn't like the pathways rule. That was 57 comments.
Okay.
People thought it should be under effective control was 48. They thought dogs should be allowed everywhere on leash, 43. People didn't see what the issue was or didn't think dogs were harming wildlife with 30. Didn't want restrictions, should be case by case was 33. It is case by case. Proposals weren't clear enough about the mowed grass, and they couldn't see mapping because we haven't done that yet. 22 people want dogs to be able to access the water. 11 want seasonal restrictions. 7
Okay, so can I have some staff comment, please, on the seasonal restrictions issue?
Right, so what were the specifics of it? What were they asking for? What time, what season?
There haven't been. We didn't have much in the way of seasonal.
Was it not?
A couple of brief comments that mentioned seasonal. They were sort of clumped together with a broad range of other comments.
I'll just make a general comment, however. So these are all quite new habitats, and they're evolving. The plants were planted in the last decade, really, and some of those reserves may be 2 or 3 years old. So currently there's limited bird life using them, you know, apart from the Canada geese, which we don't really care about. There's a few native species, but as they mature, between now and the next Bylaw review, we can expect a lot of different species to come in, including threatened species, at-risk species. And we know that will happen because that's happened at other reserves, like the Wigram Retention Basin with the AMP Showgrounds, for example, which is 30 years older. The area is on a flyway bird migration movement corridor, which is birds are breeding in the southern South Island, move down the braided rivers to the coast. They fly up the east coast until they hit Lake Ellesmere, and very few species fly around Banks Peninsula and waste their time and energy. They fly directly overland. They fly directly over, you know, Taitapu and Horswell and into Christchurch and the estuary and the wetlands north of Christchurch. So this particular site lies underneath this flyway. So a lot of birds are migrating over, and they're using that site at all times of the year. So normally we talk about seasonal, we talk about the breeding season, and currently there's a small breeding population of a small number of bird species. Within the next 5-10 years, they will expand, and there'll be a larger breeding population as the habitat develops, and as the disturbance regime settles down, and there are parts of those reserves that are less disturbed than other parts. But over that, there are migration movements, particularly in the end of the breeding seasons of Christmas through into now, and then in the spring, or the end of winter into spring. So we can expect that non-breeding birds will be coming in and either wintering in the site or migrating through the site. So it's going to have, you know, bird populations present year-round, whereas some sites only have large populations at certain times of the year. That won't be the case at these wetlands.
Okay, so is it nonsensical to make any seasonal restrictions and just... Yeah,
it's nonsensical.
Okay. Does any of the panel members want any clarification on any of the other issues that are mentioned there? Are we all on the same page with the recommendations to this here? Is that a yes? Yep.
So,
Tyrone?
Well,
Yep.
We have the option if the council goes down the track of having some parks or wetlands or reserves or whatever that are dog free.
Yeah.
In the future, that they would obviously pick out ones for a double win, pick out ones that where there is
Significant bird life.
and significant bird life taking off, then that would be obvious choice.
Okay, so let's...
There was a minor change that we've recommended to this one, and it was in response to a community board submission, which just asked that the different basins are named.
Yeah, I can see
because
that.
Takura's
Yep.
new. Yep.
That's on page 25 of your report.
I think by the next review, this is the 4th review I've been involved in, I should say. We will know.
Here too long, or
It's very knowledgeable and experienced.
When I retire, you can thank me for my service.
Dog.
It will emerge which sites are absolute core habitat and which sites don't support.
by the next review.
Easily.
Yeah.
That's another,
That's cool.
18 years away? Yeah.
Yanni will be.
Yanni will be.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, and also we do have the ability, perhaps in future design of wetland basins, to make sites that don't attract bird life, but become more water play areas. We've made the mistake, the council generally, to try to put everything in every reserve. So it's a wonderful habitat, plus it's a wonderful recreation area, and it could cause conflict. But we don't have to do that.
Right.
So we can create, out by Wigram Skies there, you've got those basins that are just bare grass, for example. There's no birds there. So we can, look at that as we go forward. But essentially, we will know which of these sites are pumping with birds and which ones are just, occasionally got a few geese in them, and then
So those grass ones aren't getting plovers and stuff,
Yeah, but plovers aren't protected.
right?
There's 261 bird species recorded in Greater Christchurch. About probably 70 of them are regular, and there's a subset of those that are the threatened species or at-risk species, or the ones for which a big chunk of the national reward population is found in Christchurch. Those are the ones we're looking after. Yeah, a few plovers aren't a concern.
Oh, look, I appreciate that. That's it's good to know.
Yeah, I think at some point, whether it fits this term or next, is a briefing to all council on our wildlife, like on our
Yeah.
bird population and what it looks like.
What we're trying to do.
I actually thought a plover was something special, and
Aussie
obviously
invade.
it's not. Just mow through, but let's find out like what they are. What are the endangered ones? So when we see the really good ones, we're going, oh, that's a bloody and special one up there. Tweet, that kind of thing.
Just say when and we'll do it.
Actually,
Thank you for
we
that.
did have a presentation
Torrin?
on that.
And of course, the last time Andrew presented to us, he got a round of applause.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was
But
an-
anyway, I did have a question around: is now an appropriate time to talk about penguin nesting sites around, or should we come back to that later? Things we're talking about birds, and we've got Andrew there.
Yes, talk about it.
I'm just
So what was the question?
it's just around penguin nesting sites around Littleton Harbour and where they nest, when they nest, and the danger presented by dogs. Really,
Well, just mindful of the time that we've got today. If it's relevant to aspects of the policy that we're considering with some of our areas,
I'll just
can
say
you try
that
and confine it to that?
those areas have been identified by staff and are already in as prohibited areas
Aha.
around, or we've proposed, but we haven't proposed new changes in relation to except for the Shag Rock Isle, the
Shag
regional
Rock
park.
Pile, yeah.
So that's one of the proposals.
eggless rock.
Yeah. We monitor and survey pretty much every single species apart from the penguins because they're done by a conservation group in the peninsula. And I haven't got the latest map of it, but a lot of the colonies are so remote from dogs they'll never get anywhere near them. Places between Purao and the Heads, for example. But there are a few locations where they are vulnerable and also where they molt. So in February, March, they have to come ashore. They sit there and spend about a month molting, and they're vulnerable to dogs then. And birds that make the mistake coming on the beaches are clearly vulnerable to dogs. So, we've added one location, which is around the Shag Rock area, where there's penguins, which is shown on the map there. But generally around the harbour, most locations that I'm aware of, but we do need to go back to the data, are largely inaccessible to dogs. Do you know sites that you
well, I
consider
don't,
specifically?
but I guess just in light of the proposals and where you can have a dog on and off leash, it's important to. I mean, because the idea is to protect.
It's reflected in the work that's been done, either that's existing or where we've proposed additional changes.
Certainly, every site that's come up, we've definitely put the lens of penguin presence on the assessment of that site.
Yeah.
And you're happy with where the policy settings are currently sitting in terms of your expertise? And
Yeah, I think they're fine.
is that all right for now, Tyrone?
That's fine for now. Yeah.
Okay. So
Well, we'll be up now.
can we move on?
Yeah. So next up, we have Sticksmill Conservation Reserve.
What page, please?
Oh,
yeah.
26 or
26,
127.
yep. And you're recommending some changes.
Yes.
Is this the one where you're recommending access to some water in some part?
No, that's the groins.
Oh, that's the groins. Okay.
Yep. So this one is Sticksmill Conservation Reserve.
Yep.
It is currently dogs are prohibited in most of the area, but they're allowed if leashed on pathways.
Yep.
And there is a dog park over in this area here. And our proposal was to prohibit dogs from the whole of this area. There is a perimeter path outside of the predator-proof fence that goes around that people can continue to walk around. That's not a problem. And this is the Hussey Road entrance road, and the dog park is fenced in here, and we recommended this area outside of the dog park, but to the side of the road is a leashed area. And in terms of public support and opposition, we got mixed views. We got a lot of support from people wanting better protection for wildlife, particularly the Sticks Mill group that was in submitting, but we got opposition from local residents who want to be able to continue to walk through the park. Some of those weren't aware of current restrictions. Some people said everything's fine and no one ever has their dog off a leash, and others said they were sick of unleashed dogs running around, and staff have also seen the impacts of dogs in the area. I'll hand over to Robbie, who manages this space, and we have proposed some changes in response to those submitted concerns.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Kia ora, everyone. Obviously proposing a pretty strong restriction through the middle of this conservation reserve. I guess, which is a conservation reserve.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the crux of it from me. Is this is a no-brainer from our perspective. This Sticks Mill Conservation Reserve is a significant wetland site in Christchurch and needs to be managed in conjunction with other wetland areas. It's essentially the sister site to Travis Wetland. It's of equal value to Travis. In fact, in some areas it has higher values. It's not had the profile that Travis has had, but I believe this is the time to propose what needs to happen here, which is a prohibition of dogs through the wetland, and then we've equally got a really well-serviced dog park outside it. Not to mention we've got the groins in this area as well. So this part of the city is super well serviced for dogs.
Yeah, look, I appreciate you've turned up today to talk to us, but I think we're all in agreement with this, so I think we can move it on.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Robbie.
just a follow on from Robbie for some information for others that I've been having conversations with Anthony for years around the reintroduction of the buff weka to Christchurch. It's our local weka. This would be the most likely place it would go. And so a reintroduction of a species like that would be phenomenal. So that's why this is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Be nice to finish the fence, wouldn't it?
Finish the fence
The predator-proof fence.
eventually, yeah.
Is the panel happy with the staff suggestions to alter things to allow slightly more access but protect what needs to be protected?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Has everybody seen that?
This is very good.
Page 129.
Okay, also this is you too, Robbie, maybe. The sticks related areas are the next category. Actually, this was not a big change. These were two small areas where we'd recommended limitations for cultural reasons, but it got raised in submission the spelling of Kapatoni or Kapatahi.
Yeah, it did.
And I wanted to check that because I couldn't find
I don't think you should
confirmation.
use the dual meaning. I think just stick to kapatahi.
Tahi?
Apparently, it was an error once in a when they used to
Transliteration.
transliteration with handwriting.
So it should be Kapatahi?
Kaputahi.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Thank you.
I will change that in the document.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank you. The next one is the groins, which is also Robbie. So
Are we all good with that, Aaron? Good with the groins?
Yeah, can you just highlight to me the changes? Just
yes, on
seems
the
like a
groins.
long time ago that I read it now.
Okay, the groins in the area at the moment, dogs are largely prohibited except for a specified area of track, part of the Otakokina track, and in an area that allows access to the dog park. There's a fenced dog park in there, and of course that's under effective control. Yeah. So what we have proposed here, partly in relation to the increase in restrictions in Sticks Mill, is to lift that prohibited rule and make it leashed in the majority of the area. We had submitters say that they wanted to keep access to a section of the river outside the dog park and on a path beside it, and so we've reflected that in the changes that are in your documents.
I think we're all in agreement with that. Aaron, question? No?
No, it's fantastic. And that dog park, I've tried twice and it will come back again to get the name changed to the Yvonne Palmer Dog Park because it was driven by Yvonne Palmer.
Yeah.
That is reflected in the policy because that came up last time, but it might not be on signage.
Yeah.
But it is in the
It's
wording.
in here. I read it.
Yeah, it will
It's
be.
news.
It'll eventually happen.
Haven't. Anyone else?
I think it's a bit long.
No. Okay, moving on. We're making some progress.
You stick to the geographical reference. anyway.
Horswell Quarry Park is the next one that we have. We didn't propose any changes to this, but we got a lot of people raising it in their comments. We have some consultation underway or imminent. Does Crystal want to talk to that?
Yeah, so we'll be doing consultation soon on Horswell Quarry Park in terms of fencing the exercise area. So it's not part of this bylaw review.
Okay.
There's already a dog exercise area there, and that's not necessarily changing, but there is
But there's no
consultation
fence.
upcoming around fencing it.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. A lot of the comments were in relation to that.
So is there any problem we're trying to fix?
No, we're
No.
happy.
We're all
the
happy?
regulations right, but there are
Oh my
landscaping
goodness, we're making
changes
progress. Right. Move on.
Don't get too confident. We don't know where we're going to go next. The next item that we had is the East Coast beaches. A lot of people raised concerns about conflict and issues that are occurring on beaches, and we wanted to acknowledge that in the advice for you, but we're not proposing any specific changes in relation to submitted comments.
Oh, I just think some confusion around whether you can walk your dog through an area or not, and it's just about education. Yeah.
Yep. The settings as we see them are appropriate as they are. We didn't propose changes, but people have raised it. Also, there's a lot of comments on under effective control as a definition, which applies on many of those beach areas, and that's covered later in your documents.
Kelly?
So just to be clear, so there's the restricted areas outside the
Summer
surf clubs,
beach
etc.
prohibition areas, yeah.
And then travelling through on a leash?
So the summer beach prohibition areas apply a set distance either side of surf lifesaving clubs
Yeah.
along the East Coast beaches.
At a time.
Within those, but it's a long summer season, and it was changed last time to align with the surf lifesaving season. And it's between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. You can take your dog there, but only if you're passing through the area, and that's so that people didn't have to go off the beach and on the road and then come back to the beach. But you can't have your dog in that area unless you're moving through it. Okay. And that is one area where we have specified short leash, and people were fine with that last time. So
Yeah, or just leash.
Leash.
Yeah.
We'll come back to we'll park that issue, but otherwise we're happy with that. I think we're happy with that. No change. With the aspects of the short leash issue, but I don't want to go into that now.
let's not. I was just more saying that is an existing rule that is there at the moment, and we didn't propose changes. The next one we've got on the list is Scarborough, and this is because I realised that we hadn't included it in your briefing notes, but somebody had raised it in the oral submissions the other day.
But that's
and
not in
it
our
was
report.
submissions. No, we tried our best to capture all the issues that were raised, but this was one that missed off the list. This was somebody concerned about dogs not being in good control around Scarborough Beach. But we haven't proposed any specific restrictions there, and we also haven't consulted on a proposal, so it wouldn't be appropriate at this stage to change it. But I just want to acknowledge that. Good. Okay. Opuaho Heathcote River, we had some submissions saying that the same rules that we're applying to the Otakura Avon River corridor should apply to the Opuaho Heathcote River, but in our view, the situations aren't the same. We've got particular rules for the red zone area because of its green spine aspect and the way that we're managing it, and we don't have those rules on the rest of the Avon, so we weren't proposing them along the Heathcote either.
Okay, are we all in agreement with that, guys?
Yep. Port Hills Reserve, so we had a lot of people in submissions commenting on the Port Hills particularly.
Can we just bring Port Hills after lunch?
Yep.
That's all right, because it's a chunky issue.
Do you want to skip it and move on, or stop?
Well,
there?
actually, we're getting pretty close to 1:30. I'm just wondering what my panel members' thoughts are when we break.
Do a couple more.
We'll do is there some low-hanging fruit we can move through quickly and then take a half-hour lunch break, guys? Is that what you want?
There's probably a bit of discussion on the next few.
Is there any more low-hanging fruit that we can knock off before we go into lunch?
Steadfast might be easy enough to move through.
Steadfast?
What's your question about it?
So the because I mean we had people coming in and saying, you know, it's an ideal place to have a dog under effective control, but there's no stock up there.
That's right.
So
we had proposed it as a leashed area to align with other areas, but from the feedback that we got, we proposed changing that, and there's a recommendation in here.
Okay, cool.
Which says
Sounds
that
good.
it would be under effective control most of the time, but
Yep.
leashed if there are
There's an
events
event.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's right. You told me that already,
Yep.
Tina, so thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
All good?
Happy with that?
Yay.
Okay, so that's another one off. Do we want to
Yes,
move
babe?
forward or go back? So we've
No. I think we're just going to take a break. What do my panel members want? Is that all right?
oh yes.
Pauline, 15 minutes, and then we'll
so,
come back
yep.
in and carry on because I think we're on a roll.
Let's go.
Making some progress. Good job. Are we? Okay. I think it's going to be We're going to get underway. That was very long, 15 minutes. Sorry. Tina, where did we get up to? I'm just mindful that we have staff in the room here, and we've got Al and Roo from Parks, and they haven't had an opportunity to talk with us at all yet. When is the appropriate time to bring them up?
Well, we've just been going issue by issue, so we've been getting the managers of those particular pieces of land to talk about.
Okay, so the panel would like to hear from Parks on some of the more crunchy issues around the restrictions on pathways and also the waterways within our parks. So when is the appropriate time to bring them up?
Whenever you'd like to do that. But there's regional park staff here as well who have all the tracks through their parks.
So do we've got a fork in the path. We can either pull the staff in now on that particular issue that covers a lot of the issues that we've got to talk about, or we do it at the end of the list. What's your preference, panel?
Do it now, then.
They're in the room. Let's do it now. Come on up. There's another chair here.
We can squeeze in. By the way, I've got Councillor Henstock at 17 dog puns.
Oh,
you guys need to
is
pick
that
up.
what we're up to?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Oh, so there's room for improvement. Okay, I did. Well, that makes it 18.
She's one sick puppy.
Okay, 19 and counting. Right, let's
Doggone it.
Oh, you're like a dog with a bone, you lot. Let's get to the issue here. I'm keen to hear the perspective from Parks on the issues that we're dealing with in a general sense. You would have heard at the beginning when we identified some of the themes around it being restrictive, about our sticking points around formed paths and some things. I'm just keen to hear from you, particularly about two things: paths in our green spaces, regardless of what definition they are, and dogs in the waterways, which are in your green spaces, and with a lens of where the problems are, what are the problems we're trying to solve here, and where you guys are thinking on the policy settings that are being were recommended in the proposal. So it's all yours.
Yeah, just so I don't have to follow the great Paul Devlin, I'll start from an urban parks perspective. We currently don't have a very big issue with dogs on footpaths, and we're basis. Thank you.
It was me.
You don't like the echo. Get out
Hang
of
on.
here.
So we've gone out on a proposal with a recommendation to change the settings. And have you just said to us, you don't think they need to be changed?
That's correct. And I think Tina and I have done quite a bit of work in the background on this. When you start defining footpaths and form tracks, and that's where the detail kind of unravels. And I think it may even differ with what Paul's views are in the regional park space.
So are you feeling that under effective control is good enough on all the paths?
In the urban green spaces where
Urban.
predominantly, people are using that for recreation, I do,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, so we have the current changes in the draft are recommending that we are defining and itemising different types of paths. You were saying we just call it a pathway, and the distinction needs to be in an urban park and a rural park. Or do we need to define an urban park? Because the more words we put, that we have a greater chance of it unravelling.
That's right. Yeah. There's, I guess, from a functional location, I think we have ecologically sensitive areas. Paul, you'll have areas where there's, the landscape it might be single track type.
But we can
things.
identify
So,
those.
Yeah, we
in
can
the
identify
policy.
those.
That's right.
And is red zone urban or rural?
It's red zone. It's
Zone
transformative.
category.
Yeah. So it will become either urban or rural, depending on
So
what's
therefore,
decided
in
with
the
it.
red zone, do you have the same view about paths and shared paths? And
Well, actually, out of my element here on that. That's not my area that I am responsible for. But however, I think where the red zone is going is it's transforming into areas that perhaps might be ecologically sensitive. You probably need to have dog prohibit zones there.
Do we need them now? Or do we wait and see how the red zone develops? What are you saying?
I mean, we had the expert ornithologist here, so I don't know about the timing on when we need to protect those areas. I think, and I don't know that all of the red zone's future is decided currently. So,
Okay, so having been sitting and listening to where we're heading today, are there any other comments that you want to make about some of the proposed changes? So we've heard clearly that you're in you don't recommend defining a path, and that you just call it a pathway, and that the current setting is sufficient. That's what you've said on pathways.
are we specifically commenting on the elements of footpaths in green spaces right now?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what else do you want to comment on? Or is that a dangerous open-ended question that means we're going to be here all afternoon?
It is on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
No, we also have the element of the leashing around sports fields.
Okay, talk to us about that.
Yeah, so that one's fairly easy in my view.
Which is?
If you're having an organised sports game on a sports field, not the sports park, then dogs should be leashed for the safety of the players. But a lot of our sports parks are so large that you wouldn't actually.
Okay, so it's the active playing space.
That's right.
And we've agreed to. So there's a recommendation, though, that we put in a 5 metre buffer. What do you think about the 5 metre buffer? Or is the active playing space sufficient? I mean, no one's going to measure the 5 metre buffer space, but what are your thoughts on that?
Most of the sports fields are inset with larger, away from the kind of the perimeters, larger than 5 meters, so that wouldn't be a problem.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm just mindful that in some of our areas, when we've got lots of sport on, you've got a gap between two fields. So you're saying that the gaps are bigger than 5 metres?
In not all places, no.
Okay, so is that 5 metres going to cause a problem? Because you could have someone standing on the sideline with a dog on a leash, but it's not quite 5 metres. So you've got a 5 metre space, which means that you're 2.5 metres.
They should be allowed if they're leashed.
If they're allowed, if they're leashed.
They're leashed. Yeah. So if you turn up to Michael's there watching the girls
So
go athletic.
You've got no issue with the draft proposal in relation to the sports fields and the amendment that's come in from the staff?
That's correct.
Great. Sorry, that feels like cross-examination now.
It was.
I didn't mean it to be. Has anyone else got any questions? Yeah,
Littleton?
Said that a lot.
Al, you would have dealt with the Littleton rec ground quite a lot over the years. So what are your views on the proposals as it pertains to that particular space? Because there has been, obviously the sports teams are really, the rugby club, the football club, sort of we need to keep this space sacrosanct kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so they, when they're using the sports fields for organised sport, I think they should have their dogs on the lead. But otherwise, it's obviously precious flat ground there, so dogs need to be able to have the ability to exercise when the field's not used for organised sport.
I mean, I was down there yesterday and there was a group of probably like 10, let's say, teenagers playing, having a kick about. And I was kind of thinking, if someone comes down here with a dog and lets them off the lead, like if one of them, it just sort of seemed like it was a ticking time bomb in a way. And so it's probably too strong a metaphor, but
no, that's fine.
You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just wondering if there's other provisions, kind of like, because it's getting used all the time for trainings and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just wondering if it's going to be strong enough to be able to prevent kind of mishaps occurring, with those.
We hope
it's the only flat space for sport.
Yeah, we hope the development will even increase the usage of the space. It seems fairly simple and straightforward that if organised sport is going on, then you need to really have your dog on a lead so that it doesn't, cause any health and safety issues.
So is that organised sport what I've described? Because they're playing football, they're playing to rules. They're just not wearing a strip, and they're not playing within a bound 90 minutes, but they're still playing according to the rules of football. So is that organised? I don't know what the definition is.
Doesn't sound like it. No. Yeah.
No.
So,
and are they utilising the whole field? I mean, it's
part of it.
Two sports.
Well, they're using the
fields,
football field,
yeah.
the whole of it.
Yeah.
So.
one of the comments that was made yesterday by Tyrone was around, we've invested a lot of money in that surface and getting it up to playing spec. And there was a suggestion that the dogs are damaging it. So other than dogs peeing and pooing on our sports fields, how are they damaging our surfaces? Is there any problem with the dogs on our sports fields? No.
None.
Okay. And we invest a lot of money in our sports
We
fields,
do,
don't
yes.
we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've written complaints about geese poo, especially down around Cal Stadium. And
Which is out of scope.
out of scope, but
Dog poo is a significant problem in Littleton. Sorry.
is it? Okay, Littleton. Anywhere else?
It might be more intense in Littleton, but overall,
It's the least religious part of the city, so we expect that.
Yeah, but it's the
We don't.
happiest part.
Organised.
Overall, we don't have major problems with dog foul across the sports field network,
Okay.
and I don't hear it from the codes as something that we need to police. So
Can we talk to you about rubbish bins in our parks?
it'll cost you extra on a
yeah,
Friday.
Because I mean, this rubbish bins is something that has come up repeatedly with people, and this issue as well. It might have been a previous council prior to our terms when decisions were made to change policy around where we're putting bins and what have you. And I know that some of the other cities have just those small, narrow receptacles for dog waste rather than big general rubbish bins. Is there anything stopping us from reintroducing other bins for dog poo?
There's
And more of them, cheaper ones that aren't these highfalutin gold star solar panelled ones that we've got?
Yeah, we're always looking at a variety of different styles to suit specific locations and purposes. The bin reduction program was halted. It did come where I had to give up some operational money to reduce that. I think we need to be careful and scrutinize locations and need for rubbish, because when we put in rubbish bins, we invite rubbish and dumping. So, we have to be real careful about that.
Yeah, but if people are out exercising their dogs, it may well be a noting provision that comes from us in relation to rubbish bins.
Do we have any composting toilets for dog waste? We're not using them. No, that's the next way to get rid of it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Worms eat it.
The Richmond Business Association, remember we funded a trial?
Yeah.
That they're trialling the composting of the dog poo.
Yeah.
In there.
When we did our reduction program, we looked at those, but found you might be aware we have issues with bin jams and malfunctions due to user practices. So we've and those are a little more sensitive They work great for private residences, but
Yep.
Okay, we're going out in the rough a little bit here.
Rough.
Out in the rough.
20.
Oh, no, I had one more question. I'm just trying to remember what it was. Actually, yeah, I remember a very direct question to Rupert during one of our F&P meetings recently about some, budget surplus in Parks Department. Could we go away from here with a little bit of hope that there may be more bins or signage? So the question is, who pays, whose budget does the dog rubbish bins come out of, and whose budget does signage come out of?
They're both asset based. So if it's in one of Paul's parks, he pays for it. If it's in one of my parks, I
And
pay
even
more.
if it's a doggy rubbish bin, it's in your space, and if it's a doggy sign, it's in your space.
That's correct.
So yeah, we may be asking for what your surplus budget looks like later on.
But who was it that gave us that?
Not Rupert's, mine.
Sorry, I'm out in the rough.
So who was it that
that's
gave
good.
us that brilliant answer about the bins?
Would have been
Was
Rupert.
it was it Matthew Ross? Was it he when he got? I think Kelly, you asked him the question about the bins, and then you said that was an excellent answer, and he went, "Nah, we don't encourage people to. We encourage people to take it
Take
home."
them home. Have we got any more questions for Al? Have we heard what we need to hear? Is there anything else you want to add, Al?
I'm good.
You own a dog, yeah.
I am a dog owner.
No, yeah. Okay. Anything else then from our regional parks? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so the issue of form tracks and
Green.
Yeah, they're all the same.
Oh, they're
all
linked.
connected. I've done that.
Okay.
finished.
All right. Quick profile.
Yeah, that definition instantly causes problems. So my main concern is if we are looking at having a relaxation on dogs around the Port Hills in particular, and under effective control in the areas that we graze, would cause me great concern in terms of being able to effectively manage what's an important part of managing the landscape up there. So if dogs are only under effective control in that landscape on pathways or tracks, then that would have a severe impact.
So you're saying leashed all the time in the Port Hills?
We've got some areas that we can relax a little bit where we don't have grazing. that
Apart
I'm
from special
quite
areas.
prepared to.
Yep.
But where we graze, and predominantly we're grazing for fire management and fuel control, as well as biodiversity values, that would have a major implication on the effectiveness of grazing. We've got about anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 sheep up in that landscape, munching away every day. That's an important part of fire management. So that would cause a problem. Other places I'm not too hung up on, but if we can make this site specific rather than a general,
Yep.
That would be quite good. And in a lot of ways, that's actually a relaxation of the current rules.
Right.
There's tracks, particularly around Diamond Harbour there, which I know Tyrone will be aware of, where at the moment it's actually dogs prohibited
Yep.
for wildlife reasons, but those wildlife values are actually 30 metres below the track.
Yep.
And so therefore we could say dogs on leash
Yep.
on those tracks, because for the same reason it's a narrow track. We have had people fall off it, and we wouldn't want to encourage.
We fixed that bit though, didn't we?
Yes, we did, but there's multiple places all around the Port Hills where you can walk off.
I know.
And we can't hope to
Could
fence
do that without a dog as well.
hundreds of
though.
kilometres of track.
Mm.
So it's actually a relaxation in some areas.
Yep.
So as long as we're site specific and we realise what the purpose of the land management is,
Yep.
then let's make it work.
Right.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I've got a.
Yep.
May I? Madam Chair. Sorry, Paul. Just on the coastal track in Diamond Harbour, you said leashing, but under effective control is effectively the same thing, really, isn't it? Except because that provides for leashing.
Yeah, under effective control is always a tricky thing, because it's a person's perception of it. Leashed is good because it's clear on a leash. I'd be concerned about that track with the amount of blind corners on it, where we've got little kids and other people. A dog bounding along that track in particular would be of risk to the council. So at the moment, as you can see, it's prohibited. So we're actually saying, let's relax that
and make it dogs on leash, except for if you're walking along the beach there, which is generally inaccessible, and that would be prohibited. So you're protecting the wildlife values by default, but you're also enabling a relaxation of the rules. I think, though, Tyrone, is that most people aren't aware that it's a prohibition on the track.
I guess that's because if you look at that map, you can see the track. It's not coloured in red.
Yeah, if you zoom in there, but the intent of the words, yeah.
Dogs are prohibited on the foreshore area, but that's not the coastal cliff track.
Yeah, however,
according to that, looks like it's available.
However, all of our signage is on tracks because that's the only place it's
Our
accessible.
policy would have to read leashed on the coastal cliff track, specified.
Yeah, well, all we'd need to do is change the signage. We can make this work
And the
right
wording
now.
in the policy.
We
Well,
just,
yeah, the proposal is to make that a lashed area.
yeah, we just peel off
specify
those
the
logos
coastal
that
cliff
have
track.
a dog with a X through it and make it leash.
Port, can I just follow up question, Vic, please? So you're talking about blind corners and risks to account. Are there any particular spots on that route that are worse than others? I mean, can you control it in that sense? Like, is there bad sections or is it just throughout?
Just confusion from a user point of view, and then a heavy reliance on signage to have a section of track which has good visibility, which is dog under effective control. You come around a corner and there's a sign saying dog on leash. I just think it's problematic.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
I think it's a step up, Tyrone.
The once again, it goes back to our education program and informing people that we could be proactive in that. And one of the big steps in that could be teaching dogs to read, because some of their owners clearly can't.
Haven't you heard about the Reading to Dogs program? Tina, my question's then for you. If there's a suggestion that we're relaxing the current rules, and I'm talking more about up in the Port Hills at the moment. So if we were to go to a no dogs on paths and not break it down into footpath, shared path. No, hang on. If we were to go to under effective control, which is what the current setting is in our parks.
Except on land that has specified rules, which many of the Port Hills reserves do.
Okay.
Currently leashed.
Okay. So that was my query then. Have we got ourselves in a bit of a bind because we didn't consult on it?
We're not proposing to change anything. The Port Hills reserves would stay leashed as they are at the moment, which includes all the pathways. So that was one of the issues that we highlighted in submission of themes, was that people were saying, I want to continue to take my dog into the Port Hills unleashed, so I'm opposing the leashed on pathways rule when it's currently a leashed area. All dogs should be leashed on those specified reserves, and that's been the case for years.
So it would only become an issue if you relax the rules to
apply everywhere.
Yeah, apply everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Yeah. There is a proposal for you in your report around lifting the leashing requirement on Victoria Park.
Yeah.
Yep, it's an area that I could
in response to
accept as a dogs under effective control. It's already largely being utilised that way.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you moved into the grey country of Barnvale and Sugarloaf on either side of it, then it's dog on a leash.
Yeah. This was on the assumption that the leashing on form tracks rule would apply.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, no, currently the dog's on leash.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think one thing to note here in terms of Christchurch being dog friendly is I don't exclude dogs or people from any parkland during lambing, which is very unusual in public space across the country. Most places have a stop, and we don't do that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're ready to...
Need to keep them there for the beach discussions around the bays.
Beach discussions around the bays?
I mean, I've got a question around Hayes Bay, Paradise Bay, Chartres and Poorea. I mean, I don't know, the dogs are prohibited there at the moment in the summer. Is that correct?
I actually can't answer that. No, there's some summer beach prohibitions in place.
Yeah.
Around
7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah, which is just the summer ones, and that's for recreational swimming activities.
So why could we not have that as leashed on the beach
all the time?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't proposed that.
They're not really overly populated beaches. It's normally, a lot of them
Oh.
people don't even know where they are.
These came in last time as a special change where we had to do extra consultation because it was raised in submissions, and we went back to residents associations and these were wanted.
Did they talk about ensuring the dog was on a leash?
No, they specifically asked for summer beach prohibitions for their beaches, and we did extra consultation and put them in place. These were well supported by the community and sought.
And Church Bay is not affected by this.
That's Paradise.
Church Bay is just around from Black's Point.
Oh yeah, no, there isn't one in place there.
It's okay.
It's largely, yeah, there's only a short bit accessible.
That surprises me. Okay. So it's been consulted on, people were happy with it.
The specific feedback is included. There were a couple of people saying that they didn't like it, but then other people said they wanted stronger restrictions to protect wildlife. But the origin of these spaces is that they were added last time because local people requested it.
But then we've ascertained that it's, if they were on a leash, it's not going to affect the wildlife, is it?
These are summer beach restrictions, so they're about recreational space.
Can you point me to the page on your report for the summer beach restrictions, please?
136 is Hayes Bay Paradise.
We don't have a specific section on summer beach prohibitions. They apply to specified beaches across the district, so they're everywhere here in blue. So they're dotted around the place, and they have been in place for some time. They're to protect recreation activities from. So when we had some submissions about Cass Bay, asking for a portion there to be allowed, but staff have advised that it's too small a space.
But the thing is that, Tina, you might consult on these individually and people comment and then we put restrictions in. But when you combine all of the beaches around Banks Peninsula, you can't take your dog to the beach in the summer. And this is what I'm hearing from people. During, but it's 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's the whole time. So it makes a difference when, I mean, that's why I'm thinking, could they take them on a leash?
Anyone could submit on any aspect, and we did get comments on all sorts of things where we weren't proposing changes, so it was people's views as a whole. They can take their dogs there on a leash if they're passing through the area. That's what that exemption is designed for. But otherwise, dogs should not be there during those swimming hours.
Yes, I understand that, but my point is, are we correct there in making that a rule? Because we've actually blocked dogs out of every beach and around the peninsula in the summer.
I suppose what you're saying, though, is that
Questions haven't got a problem.
no one submitted on that.
We didn't receive that comments on that in submissions.
You didn't ask a question on it either.
That's true.
What's the staff comment about that? Do you think dogs are a real issue on the beaches around the Banks?
Have we got a problem?
Look, I can absolutely take your point, but and yeah, so if you weren't asked for pudding, do you ask for it? So yeah, it's a funny question, isn't it? So if you zoom out and look at the peninsula in particular, about beaches that you can go to,
there's hardly any.
Where can you go to with you? Which beach can you go to with your dog?
Any that aren't coloured.
Yeah, so all of the 29 kilometres of Kaiteriri spit.
Yeah, but that's hardly a beach, is it?
Off
to the beach.
Yeah, so I mean around Akaroa, if you zoom into there, there's what happens in Children's Bay there. That's a popular spot, so that isn't marked in anything.
We've proposed restrictions there to protect wildlife. There are a whole lot of beaches around, particularly mudflat areas around Banks Peninsula where we've proposed restrictions. Children's Bay, Takamatua is already in, Robinson's Bay is new, Devotial is already covered.
So where can you take
Barry's Bay is
So
new.
the question was,
French
where
Farm,
can you take your dog to the beach? And I mean,
any coastline that's
that's Akaroa, but if you live in Christchurch,
nobody goes.
You've
Nobody
got to go
knows.
to Banks Peninsula to find a nice beach, and I think there aren't any.
So we just have these either end of within a set distance of surf lifesaving clubs, and the rest of the beaches all.
Yeah, but you don't go there in an easterly. Could we look at maybe reducing those restricted hours, and potentially on a leash? Those two things. What do you think? Do you get comments from people about it? So yeah, they probably do it anyway, but it's the people in Christchurch that don't have a beach to take their dog to.
You're just talking Littleton Harbour.
Yeah,
Have we got a problem we need to solve on beaches?
in Littleton Harbour. Yep. Lots of people. In Littleton Harbour, you
Okay,
can't go
look.
to a beach with a dog.
I think we might just park that for now.
Well, can we ask
Most of
staff
those
to
aren't
consider
wildlife
advice
sensitive,
around
they're all
taking a dog to the
recreational
beach on a
driven.
leash?
Yep.
That would be quite easy to enforce because people would complain about it.
So you might want to accent that.
Yeah.
You mean on New Brighton?
Yeah.
So most of the rules in Littleton anyway aren't based on wildlife values. They're based on the recreational experience, whatever that captured.
But the other thing is, you talk about that, but families, their dog is part of the family. And they like to go for a swim with the dog.
I'm not
Yeah,
arguing
yeah.
with you. So the Purao one there, which is the blue, that's all about wildlife values.
Yeah.
Ironically, it's probably a Wahitapu side as well. So it probably
We've
should
proposed prohibited area around the outfall of the creek there.
That's good. The rest of them would all be, except for the coastal cliffs below it, which is wildlife, and the mud flats at the end of Allendale, wildlife. But the rest of the beaches in those areas are all about the people contact and whatever those concerns were originally around creating that as part of the bylaw. So, if there's the appetite to change those, then I suppose we need to look at submissions and.
Okay, so if the question is there an appetite around panel members to have a closer look at this and to change that, recognising that there wasn't any information in the submissions about it, and that's probably because they weren't asked the direct question about it. Pauline's raised it. Does anyone else want to have a closer look at the beach issue, or is there nothing to see here?
I don't mind, just to say what you think. As long as it
Well,
agrees with me.
Aaron usually does.
You're right with it.
Okay. Kelly? No, I don't have a view on it either.
Okay.
So we're going to move on.
Did we settle on Littleton Recreation Ground? We're going with keeping it. Do we go back with changing it to the status quo and applying the sports field rule?
It's just another sports field.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same rules.
So lifting the leashing requirement. Steadfast
I
Park.
don't necessarily agree with that.
I think we
but-
agreed on steadfast.
We
didn't
No,
we?
happy
just
with
going back to the
steadfast?
Littleton Rec Ground, I've still got reservations around treating it like any other sports field, but
Yeah,
I think it's fine.
we recognise that, but I think you outvoted 4-1. So if you, on that particular issue, you can raise it in your debate probably at the end, Tyrone. I'm happy to single it out that way.
And we were happy with lifting the leashing requirement on Victoria Park.
Yeah, I think
in
so.
response to
Yeah.
concerns from submitters.
Yep.
Hoonhay Scenic Reserve, we didn't consult on this, but we had to submit a request that it's leashed because it's grazed.
Hoonhay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hoonhay Scenic Reserve.
that makes sense. The very first bit should be leashed.
So we've got a recommendation in there for you.
I don't think we've got an issue with that because it's grazed. Yep. Are we all okay there? Yep.
Coastal Cliff Reserve and Foreshore, did we settle on keeping it leashed?
Yes.
I don't agree with that.
What do you think?
Do you want under effective control?
Under effective control.
But Paul, you suggested there's quite a wildlife issue.
No, it's not a wildlife issue. I'm just aware that we've had issues there. We did have a coronial there, and
What was it?
It wasn't to do with
Involving a dog?
there was the only, and I was loath to bring this up, but there was only just a reference to that there was a dog, and that's it. And I'm not making any more of it than that. And that wouldn't be my reason for it. But I think in general, it's an easier one to say on leash than it is. But if I'll take guidance from the group. It's not really suitable. There might be the odd section you can bike on.
No.
Yeah, but no, don't think so.
Obviously,
Currently prohibited.
Well, yeah, it depends how you interpret that map. So if you zoom into that map, you'll see that the track is outside of it. The path, the signage on the path says no dogs.
We,
Which is,
Well, I'm saying
thought it was
that we're-
leashed.
I'm saying that we're relaxing it to on leash. Yeah. But no.
Tyrone, do you want to park that?
yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm concerned about, and I put a lot of store in Paul's advice here, which is that, you know, there is risk and of liability to the council, and that's something that needs to be
Should we just
Yeah,
percolate on that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just chew on that a little bit.
I mean, I think there's substantial risk actually, because if you're walking with your family and you've got young kids and someone comes around the corner with a dog, could potentially scare a child off the edge or something like that. You know, I think we need to be.
Well, I think if you guys are going to go for a walk around the city parks, go out to Tyrone's Patch and have a walk on there and see what you think.
Okay.
You know, we'll make it work. If people truly are keeping their dogs under effective control, then it isn't not a problem. I get it.
I have walked that path and it can be a bit hairy, but I think it's once again, we've got to put trust in people to have their dogs under control. Having it on a leash could be worse. Someone could trip over that leash coming around the corner. I think with you on this one, effective control, but I mean,
I've got no grazing concerns. I've got no wildlife concerns at all.
okay.
So it's,
Yeah, but then does having a dog there make it less safe? You could run into a kid. And
Well,
fall
look,
off.
we've got a lot of decisions to make. We don't have to make a decision on this here and now. So can we just park that and come back to it? I think we're not all agreed on it, which is obvious, but let's just take a little bit of time to think that one through so that when we do land on a decision, we're comfortable with it, because I'm not comfortable either way at the moment. Is that all right? Okay, thank you.
we just had a brief listing or mention that one submitter said that we should include Magazine, Uramo and Whakaropo Reserve, but we didn't have any particular reason for it and we didn't propose it. And
what is Urumau? Because Urumau has always been under effective control, I think.
and all three of them are, and they
Stays the
said we
same.
should include it, but they didn't say whether they wanted it leashed or prohibited or why they wanted it
No
included.
change.
So we'll just have to leave it as a no change, thanks.
Cool. The mudflats around Banks Peninsula, we had good support around wildlife protections. There are a number of those specific
I think we're all agreed on that.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, prohibited, but it's also not a great place to wander because it's mudflats. It's about protecting
It's
wildlife.
stinky.
Wainui Beach we had raised by one submitter, but the staff advice was that there aren't significant issues on that beach with dogs, so we were recommending keeping it as it is, which is under effective control.
Yep. There we are. So you can take your dog.
Here's one of your beaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
It's quite a long way away.
Onawepa
All right.
Historic Reserve.
Hang on.
Oh, sorry.
Carry on, I'll ask it.
Yeah. Thanks, Tina. Carry on.
Just that we weren't proposing any changes from what we had proposed for Onawepa Historic Reserve, which is prohibited, and that's because the reserve management plan for the area, it's Ngātahu land, Waihitapu dogs should be prohibited for cultural reasons, so we were supporting what they're doing by including it in our restrictions here. And then I just had a note to consider Pigeon Bay foreshore to protect wildlife. We didn't mention that in the report, but it was raised by Pam Richardson. And I didn't have a staff view on that because I hadn't included it or sort of staff view.
Can we hear a staff view on that?
Yeah.
Come on down.
Oh, yeah, either.
You wanted to bring that down and include the mud
And then there, Andrew. You just,
Oh, no, have you? Do you want a pen down?
We hadn't recommended Pigeon Bay foreshore, except we hadn't recommended Pigeon Bay foreshore because bird numbers are quite low compared to other sites like Port Levy. But at the camp at Pigeon Bay, there's a little spit, and there's protected bird species that are nesting at that spit. So I'm not too sure the status of that particular spit. If you can just go
I'm on
along
Pigeon
there.
Bay, sorry, I'm in
Yep.
Port Levy. Is this where I am?
Keep
Port
going
Levy.
to the right,
All right.
and see the red part there. That's where the spit is. So that's an area that's important. But the actual the cobble foreshore at Pigeon Bay, where the West Stream comes in at the bottom of it, it does have some bird species, but quite low numbers compared to other sites, like the mudflats on both the main harbours and Port Levy. So we haven't recommended it. So my view would be you don't necessarily need to have a reserved area there, but the red area definitely retain it.
Okay. Are we all sweet with that?
So what are we doing? Supporting Pam's suggestion or not?
We are in relation to the mud flat area. but
It's a
not
mud
the
flat area, but
protected
what
area.
end,
Andrew's
mudflat
saying
and
is it
stone
doesn't
cobble.
have the high priority needs that other spaces that we've recommended do, so he wouldn't recommend prohibiting in the bottom area here that isn't covered. That's what Pam was talking about.
She was, okay.
So typically, at most areas, there might be between 1 and 400 birds. This location typically supports 20 to 50, or maybe 20 to 40. So they're quite dispersed because at low tide, particularly, there's a big wide area, and at high tide, a lot of them go to the paddocks and farmland behind. So it doesn't have that pinch point that we have at some of our other sites.
Okay.
And none of them are protected species that are there.
They're all protected, but in low
They
densities.
change, isn't it?
Okay. Are we all right with that?
Yep.
Your ward, Tyrone?
I kind of took it from Pam that she wanted all the mud flats prohibited.
She
around.
did.
So
She did.
there's no mud flat there. It's just cobble.
Oh,
We're happy to agree. The more the merrier. But if you were to class the higher value to
Yeah.
the lower value, it's not a higher or middle value site. It's a lower value site.
From a user's public point of view, they head to that campground. For good reasons. There's no dogs. The wee spit there is the high value habitat point of view, which is probably outside the campground footprint, but
And that's the bit
protected.
that we're protecting.
Yeah, and the rest of it. So to give people somewhere to go with their dog, then having at low tide anyway access around that head of the bay is probably quite valuable.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to take staff advice on that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely, yeah.
yep,
That's
no,
what Pam would do
nothing
as
to
well.
see here, so no change. Yeah.
After this, we've got more general areas, unless you want to go back to anything, but we're moving on to things like under effective control and picking up after dogs and maximum limit on the number of dogs.
Yeah, with those crunchy
areas.
issues, and we'll have a crack at it, do we? Oh, Tyrone?
Just before that we do that, I just had a quick question just around reserves above Littleton. We talked about Urdamo, but up around sort of the Hornbrook track and Chalmers track and that. So that's currently under effective control, isn't it? I think anyway.
That's not our land. So
Oh, it's dock, is it?
yeah,
Oh,
dock
righty.
for Chalmers and Hornbrook.
Oh, yeah, sorry, of course.
Whakaraupo though is what's Whakaraupo, Tina?
I don't think it's covered.
Okay, can we just ask that?
Um,
The question around the lower Heathcote salt marshes.
oh,
and
yes,
pyramid.
yes, sorry. Yes, we need to go back to that. It's Robbie.
What page is that, Tina? Oh, here, I've got it. It's 133.
Okay. This was just a brief mention. We had some submitters who were opposing what we're putting in because they didn't see that there was wildlife that needed to be protected. So we're talking about the areas around here. So we've changed the description of that area slightly, and we're recommending the same rules that we have on other low-lying coastal areas, which is leashing on pathways and prohibited elsewhere.
Is that the third square down, prohibited slash
The
leash?
shape isn't reflective of what the land is now. This is the current rule. So where it covers this area as well, doesn't it, Robbie? Do you
Yeah,
want to,
it's not
or do you want
current.
me to bring up the other map?
Yeah, it's not currently an entry, but it's all of the area east of Tunnel Road that makes up a large portion of Ferrymead Regional Park.
But what is it currently? Is it prohibited slash leashed?
Well, it's yeah.
It's
And
a
what does that
mixture
mean?
now.
I don't know what it means.
There's no entry for that area, so I guess it effectively means it's under effective control.
Oh,
So it's lots of different bits of land. So if we look at the proposal,
So the land itself is currently being developed. Well, it's partly natural coastal wetland and is expanding due to the subsiding landscape and
Yep.
expansion of salt marsh. And it's part of a significant restoration project which will be continued to be planted. So we planted about 12,000 native plants there last year, and the habitat is going to expand.
So dogs are currently prohibited except on the walking tracks where they must be on a leash. Right, and then what are we changing it to?
The shape. We're just changing the land that's covered by it because we've got different
Okay.
public access for
Yeah,
developments
that's
in the area.
Just to let you know that I've monitored the site pretty much every month for the last 40 years, and there's a lot of wildlife there despite the submitter not believing their word.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry.
I've monitored this site monthly for the last 40 years.
4-0.
4 decades, and the submitter may have been unaware that there's about 300 pakiko that live in winter through the farmland, which we're converting into marsh. So by the time we have the next review, it will be marsh. And the actual tidal environment and the salt marshes support a lot of bird species, many protected and threatened
So you'll
species.
support this change?
So I support, that we
Okay.
could protect it, correct.
Thank you.
So just on that, so I totally support this, but it's the explanation of that prohibited / leashed. I could not understand what that meant. So actually what we're saying is permitted on paths only and must be leashed. If I read that, I would understand what it meant. So we've got to look at the language.
For all of these, we've got the dog control status in that column, and then the other one describes where that applies to and the reasons it applies.
It's the status description that I'm finding difficult. So maybe we could look at that. Do we have to stick with that? Is that part of the Act? Description in the Act, or is it our
The Act
wording?
says that we have to specify which land where dogs are prohibited or where dogs must be leashed.
Yeah.
Give up. It's not clear. If I was a member of the public reading prohibited / leashed, I would not know what
it
that
meant.
meant. I'd go, oh, is it prohibited or leashed? And you don't, it's not clear.
What about when you read the explanation to the right? Does that help?
But that's not going to be in it, is it?
Yes. Yeah. This is the legal wording that
Might
we're
be
needing
easy-
to agree on, and then the mapping is done with the title. It has the colour that corresponds to the status, and then when you click on it, it has the description.
Paths only. Oh, no, because it's not allowed anywhere else.
A lot of it's prohibited.
Yeah.
So the whole balance of the wetland is and the mudflats are prohibited, except that the pathway
Do you want a
dogs
path?
need to
So
be on a
leashed on
leash.
path.
And this is to stop the dogs from running.
Maybe it's
An owner must
something-
control the dog, prevent the dog going into the wetland.
If it said prohibited except on a path and must be leashed, that's clear as anything. But I know it's got a lot more words in it. But
Yeah, it could be prohibited leashed on path, might do it.
Yeah, let's not wordsmith it today, but can you take that away, please, and have a closer look at that? Because I agree with Pauline, it's not immediately obvious, and we're really diving into the detail here, and we know we're very well informed on the topic, and we're still having trouble with that phrase.
John had a great phrase for it.
What was that?
Just prohibited / leased on path.
Unless leashed on a path.
These we'll have to go through all of the other entries that also have prohibited / leashed because they're not
Yes,
all
you will.
prohibited and leashed in paths.
Yeah.
They all have slightly different arrangements.
yes,
But the description is in that main part.
yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're okay with that. Pyramid?
We're okay with Ferry Mead. I've lost the flow now.
Did we do Port Hills Reserves?
We've
We're
covered
up to
all
the other
of
bylaw and policy areas,
Yep.
which are at the bottom of your.
We've covered all the specific areas.
Yep.
And now we're on to under effective control.
Okay, panel members, we're about to enter into the rough. Do you want to take a break, or do you want to just
No, we'll
bound
stick
on
through
in?
it.
Gotta keep going.
You want to take 5?
Well, I'll take 5, you guys.
Okay.
No, we're going to keep going.
Five always becomes 15. What happened to our 15 before?
The easy stuff, man.
Oh,
So if
can
you
we
want
start with the
to-
easy stuff?
What's easy?
I don't know.
If you want to look at what you've got, you should have a copy of this, and it might be easier to read than on the screen. So this has the bylaw in it and the policy, and we're talking about the bylaw wording,
Yep.
which is at the end of this document.
Yep.
Is that true? Is it at the start? So we have a current definition for under effective control, which is the default that applies in all public spaces. We proposed some changes because when we went out with the survey and we said, should we improve things or make it clearer, lots of people said yes. So we've proposed some changes there. One of the structural things that we did was just to put what under effective control means in the clause itself rather than in the interpretation section. So that, I'll see if I can make it bigger, is the
Oh, I've
current.
got one. I've scribbled it over.
Yeah. So the first clause there just says every dog needs to be under effective control in all public places and at all times. And then we've got, in order to achieve that, this is what you have to do. And so this is the proposal that we went out with, and we got a lot of good support for the definition. We got a lot of people saying they didn't understand what under effective control meant, but when some of those people looked at the bylaw, they understood the description that was in there.
I think it's good.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see it in the body of the policy rather than the definition section.
You guys happy with it?
Yep.
Much better, yeah.
Just looking for pictures.
I think that's a tick. Just, we'll ask Kelly when he comes back in. There he is.
So
Kelly, we just, we're looking on page 138 of our agenda, and it's the definition of under effective control. What they're doing is they're including the under effective control in the body of the policy and not hiding it away in a definition section. We're all agreed on it. We just wanted your thoughts on that. Good to go?
Great.
we
Nothing
also
to see
just
here.
added a clause there to say that if you are unable to keep your dog under effective control, you should leash it, even if leashing isn't required.
So are you saying you're adding it?
That went out for consultation. That's just giving you the full context that we also proposed that and didn't get any specific comments on adding that in.
Yeah,
We're not proposing changing it from consultation.
it's very sensible.
Everything in blue here is new text
It's sensible.
for
Very
consultation.
sensible.
Also, just for your background, it is a legal requirement for everyone in public places to carry a leash. That's in the Dog Control Act. It's not in our policy. It's a
It needs to be in our
national law that
policy.
applies.
I think it needs to be in the policy.
We've got clarification
Where's that?
there, the Dog Control Act, in the explanatory note to the everyone has to have their dog under effective control. It says the Dog Control Act also requires the owner or person in charge of a dog to carry a leash when taking their dog into public places, whether or not it is a leashed area. So that's good background to know. We've mentioned a minor change there, and that's we had some submitters note that, so this is the bylaw. The policy has to talk about what the bylaw is doing, so there's duplication in the two, and we've got slight minor misalignment on words, so we'll fix those up and bring those back to you
Sure.
in the copy that you agree to.
Cute.
That's all we had on that. We got a lot of submissions talking about people not picking up after their dogs. We haven't proposed any changes in particular.
Other than the recyclable,
Have I lost it?
compostable bags.
So we proposed a minor change for consultation. We received good support generally, but we just acknowledged that in this analysis that a lot of submissions focused on people not picking up after their dogs, but also for broader context in your other discussions about leashing, a lot of people mentioned leashing in relation to people not picking up after their dogs. And we're of the view that if dogs are leashed, owners are more likely to pick up after their dogs. So that fits into the broader conversation about leashing. So no changes there from us.
Just on the not picking up after your dog, does that fall under littering?
No, it's an offence under. So every breach of the bylaw is a
Separate
$300 infringement fine.
Right, it's about the
Set
same as littering.
Flat rate. Yeah, there's a 200 and 400 for littering, but it varies based on whether it's dangerous or not.
Yeah.
Um,
Leaving your dog poo in the bag, or what a lot of people like to do, I've noticed, is you wrap it and then toss it, especially towards a river. That's littering at that point, isn't it?
You have to dispose of it appropriately.
Yeah, but when you toss it towards the river, that's littering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot of reports from staff, if we're going back to data, not to open this again, but we have a lot of reports from staff and from volunteers about how much they're coming across that people are not taking home with them. They're not disposing of it appropriately. It's all through gardens. Volunteers are coming across it. It's not a good state out there. And so that came through really strongly
That
in
goes back to the
submissions.
bin thing, because they
Partly
go,
bins, but it's
there's
about
no bin, so
responsibility
I'll
too.
hide it in the garden.
Yeah. But they're currently breaching the bylaw when they do that. It's a legal requirement to pick it up and dispose of it appropriately.
So then the question would be, how many infringements have given out for hiding a poo in a garden?
Well, it's about citing it or having evidence. You know, it's a tough one. But part of this is about getting behaviour change and getting the general standard of dog management in public places lifted. So I mean, there's always opportunities to do more in terms of public education around what the requirements are. It's also a way of spreading dog diseases. It contaminates waterways. There's a lot of reasons why people should be picking this up, and it's not just the burden on other people when they leave it behind.
Can I hear from Parks Department on this dog waste issue, please?
Thanks. Yeah, we did have some learnings from COVID when we had more intense use of the urban parks with dog poo and bin usage, and we had to actually encourage people to take it home in the red bin, as a lot of dog owners do. Yeah, you see them wrap it onto their lead and bring it home with them. It's probably the most efficient way of disposing of it, really, instead of additional bins.
And considering the number of dogs is increasing.
But it comes down to that old argument, whose responsibility is rubbish? And yes, it's the original creator of the rubbish, but councils take rubbish away and then dispose of it. So where's the pickup point? Do you take it all back home?
Yes.
If you go to town and have McDonald's, you carry your wrappers all the way back home and put it in the bin along the way.
What are the practices? What's actually happening in practice?
Yeah, I can give you some examples. I wish I had photos, it'd be great. But Horsell Quarry, for instance, we've got bins for dog waste. We've got 3 skips at Victoria Park that are purely devoted to emptying dog bins into. They're great on a hot summer's day. But staff at Horsell Quarry who are line trimming and preparing areas for planting have to stop and go and shower every 2 hours because they're getting covered in dog shit. So it's really becoming a massive problem with people just not picking up their waste, and volunteers just refusing to work in areas now because of the waste.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is a real problem. It certainly is around where I live. It's just incredible. And it's usually just a small number of people. We've had Lionel and his team out trying to modify behaviour and give warnings, etc. But it's
basically
just atrocious.
one responsibility of
Is
owning
adding
a
a
dog.
bin going to encourage people to pick it up?
Yeah, so there's plenty of bins. So people can, but they don't.
They don't.
They give it a nudge with their foot, or it's a convenient time to talk to your mate and look the other way.
Yeah.
So it's
not going to help those people having more bins.
Yeah, I think it's really only an enforcement issue. Well, it is essentially an enforcement issue because, in my area, one particular chap's been confronted and he just says, well, I'm not going to change. And but actually, the process of catching that particular person is, it's really problematic.
Seeing my staff walk in and they're just covered in dog crap.
It's really distressing to hear that. I think in terms of the policy, have we got any issues with anyone complaining about the wording, or are we on agreement with where the recommendation is on this issue? And maybe we need to note about the need for a education campaign around it.
It's not just education, it's going to have to be backed up with enforcement.
Yeah, I
So we're gonna
agree.
have to talk
Both.
to
Yeah, and
Lola's
we
team.
can.
We're going to need a blitz. We're going to have to go hard on
So
it.
recognising that this is a common theme, we have got a problem. Can we have some staff work on some suggested noting provisions, please, about the need for enforcement and about the need for education around it, campaigns around it. Is that enough for today? Yep. Thank you.
But all jokes aside, what a shit of a job.
Yeah. Yeah, agree.
All
jokes aside, here's a
Yeah, we have a duty to protect.
Do we get a prize if we hit 100 dog comments today?
Oh, that's poor form.
Oh,
Just checking with Lionel, what would enforcement look like on kind of?
That's the advice we're going to get.
yeah, can we?
Yeah,
can we
we're
leave
going to
it?
need someone
Yep.
that it's pretty serious.
Yeah.
Okay.
I realise it was that bad.
Maximum limit on the number of dogs. Is that where we're at next?
Yes, I'm trying to find it, and I'm just
I can tell you.
swimming around here trying to find it. Up further. There we go. Okay. So,
What page is it, please?
sorry. In terms of commentary, are you looking in the bylaw? Or
No, I'm looking in your report.
42 or 143.
Oh, there it is. And on the bylaw,
4. Clause 4.4.5.4.
Terrible stuff coming in every couple of hours.
Okay.
We propose putting a limit in place on the maximum number of dogs one person can be in charge of in public places. And we provided an exemption process for people who can responsibly be in charge of more than 4 dogs in a public place. And this is an issue that many councils around the country have been considering recently. We've seen a big increase across the country in the number of people that are offering dog walking services, and there is a big range in the people that are offering these services. So we have some excellent people who are very well organised, they're aware of risks, they're very good with training dogs. They are operating very well, and we have other people who are causing problems with letting multiple dogs loose in public places and presenting safety concerns. So different councils are looking at this in different ways, and they're taking different approaches. I know that some places have mentioned Wellington as an approach. Wellington takes a different approach. They offer a licence, and they're looking at it as a commercial activity in a public place. We are looking at it under the Dog Control Act, where we can enforce it more clearly, and we're looking at putting a limit in on the number of dogs. And then if people want to apply to control more dogs, they can, and that's a separate part that's in a different
would
clause.
we think about maybe having no maximum number, but having a off-leash number as 2 any one time?
We talked about that earlier. We were trying to think about how to respond to issues raised by submitters. So just to clarify what we got from submitters, this was one of the key questions. We got everything across the spectrum, from all dogs should be leashed to no one can have more than 1 or 2 dogs at once, 1 dog per, to it's no problem to have 7 dogs unleashed. So there was no real clear consensus that we got through our submissions about what was appropriate. But when we did the earlier survey, we got numbers through, and generally people said 2 to 3, I'm just looking at Crystal, 2 to 3 for off leash and 3 to 4 for on leash. So when we proposed, we went 2 off leash, maximum of 4 altogether, up to 2 off leash.
The other thing to look at in the limit on number of dogs is, so that was one of the key questions. So we have overall stats. So 69% of submitters said yes, we want a limit. And then if you look at the commentary, Tina's right, there is a little bit of differentiation around what that number is. But for the most part, submitters were happy with what was proposed. So 70% happy with what was proposed.
Yeah, but the thing is are we trying to again fix a problem that doesn't exist?
This is a problem that many councils are seeing around the country. This isn't just an issue. We are seeing this, yes.
Lionel.
Bono, I think it was Bono, one of the submitters, he spoke about going to the groins where a van arrives and just offloads dogs. He's specifically talking about a specific dog walker. Barnet Park is another one where we find dog walkers, 13 dogs off leash.
So why don't we go and approach those people individually if we know who they are, rather than
breaking a rule? So what are you going to say to them?
Oh.
But I mean,
Start looking for tools.
if we have the limit of how many dogs can be off leash, and only set that at 2, then that actually curbs a lot of that problem.
We did get some submissions from people who said, look, I've got 2 dogs and I take my neighbour's dog or my friend's dog, and I take 3 dogs and I don't want to have to just leash one of them, or I've got 3 dogs, they're used to being off leash together, I don't want to just leash one of them. So we've been trying to think about how we could respond to that.
But you've put 2 anyway.
We have put 2, but I'm reflecting what submitters said in relation to 2.
I think the numbers are too low, and I think it's too restrictive. I think if we're calling this whole thing quite prescriptive and restrictive, could we not say maximum number is something like 6, and then off leash is 4?
Pauline, what about that is what applies to people that, you or I, those rules apply. But for anyone who's a professional walker, then
They
would
have
need
to
a
apply.
system that they're registered.
That's the exemption process
Yeah.
that we've got.
So then an exempt walker, and we would work, if we ever had someone like Dogman again, we would then work with him to give him an exemption if he can demonstrate that he's good. Then the exemption's going to work for people that know Bono and stuff like that know what they're doing.
Yep.
Is it
Okay,
going to be
so-
hard to get an exemption? What do you have to do?
No, I don't.
I'll take you to that because there's clauses on it. So it basically says that's the limit for everyone, but if you want to and apply for an exemption, then you can. And then the exemption is down here on clause 12. Oh no, sorry. Wrong section.
I know, we're getting
There it is.
tired.
13. So this basically says that if you want to, you can apply. We haven't been prescriptive about what's required because everyone is a bit different. There's no set dog qualification that anyone would universally have. It doesn't really exist. So we've said, provide us with information that demonstrates your dog control knowledge and experience, including any relevant qualifications or accreditations. And we heard from one of the dog training associations, so that would be there. We've suggested business planning documents that demonstrate good dog management, and that can come in a variety of forms. So you would have heard some of the professional dog walkers that came said that they always vet their dogs. They have a good record of the dogs they've got. They take them for like a test walk before they bring them out and with other dogs. They're the kinds of processes that we'd expect to see with good dog owners.
B is a lot of work. Risk management documents, health and safety planning.
But
And
there's a
public liability
business.
insurance. We met with a number of dog owners before when we were developing proposals, and we said, well, what would you like this to look like? And they suggested all of those things before we'd
So
raised them. They
what
said,
about
we
if-
already have these things. We operate well in public spaces. We're aware of the risks. Just to bring it back a little bit, the risks are one of the dogs you takes out gets bitten by another dog or attacks another dog, or a pack mentality happens and something goes horribly wrong. So it's also about protecting dog owners that are engaging these services to make sure that people that are taking responsibility can take responsibility and have those dogs safely in public places.
Yeah, that's a business thing.
Like at the moment, your auntie can start a childcare business and look after 2 neighbours' kids. If she takes 10 kids, she's got to tick a whole lot of boxes, and they're there for a reason. I see this as the same, and most of the submitters seem to be in favour of this with the professionals.
Yeah, but my point is that this, like it or not, is still a wee bit of work. Even if you look at 5, if you're the registered owner, you don't have to do 4B, which is the big bit. However, if you're looking at only over 4 dogs triggers this, I think the number's too low. I think we should look at six dogs before you trigger that.
Not many people own 6 themselves, so you'd be, or the registered owner is exempt.
We have figures on ownership if you'd like.
Yeah, I've been through that.
98% of dog owners own 1 or 2 dogs. 99.8% of dog owners own 4 or fewer dogs. And it's only 0.3% of dog owners that own more than that. And a lot of those people with many dogs are dog rescue companies. They've got training. They've got specialist
Registered
dogs.
breeders.
They're
So anyone
breeding.
with more than 4
Yeah.
dogs can apply for an exemption.
Because they're the registered owner.
But
This is
also-
about businesses.
But those people who own multiple dogs don't necessarily want to take all of their
them out
dogs
together.
out into public at once. If you own 10 dogs and you're a rescue, then you're not taking them all out at once. You'll take some on and off.
So can we just have a quick sweep of where we're at? I can see where you're at. Where are you guys at?
I do agree with Pauline a little bit on B. Maybe 1 or 2 of those things could come out, but certainly a big chunk of it is important. I'm sure you could probably Google and cut and paste most of those, like truly, but at least you've read them and you've worked out, yes, that does apply to me because you're showing a council staff member. But the rest of it, I do agree with. I think that if you're taking 7 dogs out, you need to be a professional and know what you're doing and know what happens when something goes wrong.
So just to highlight there, that subclause 7 says that the application process is a combination of supplying those documents and meeting to discuss it. So it's really about engaging.
They've got to understand. They've got to know what they're doing.
And it's a good network to have a good relationship with for dog control and the business owners to have
100%.
a good relationship and to build on that. So the idea is not that it's overly difficult at all. It's that it's about connecting and making sure that the risks are covered.
So then if I decide I'm going to go into the dog walk business and I ring the council and say, hey, can someone steer me in the right direction around B and give me a little bit of help? I'm picking he's already nodding. The staff are going to guide you in the right, say, hey, you're going to go read this, this and this, get these things, and then we'll meet and chat, because you don't want to stop people from taking up a business, but
Yeah.
the dangers of getting it wrong.
The application.
There's a proposal in the annual plan for a fee. It's a one-off fee of $175, and so you'd pay it and then just keep that.
And do you think that will cover the admin?
That's
and
what it's
council
been
side?
set at
Yeah.
on that assumption.
I'm comforted by number 8 there as well, that all relevant other information. So if we've got some what we call repeat offenders or people that we know are real issues, then that can be brought into consideration. And can one of our enforcement officers then revoke an exemption? How does that work? Did I read that somewhere?
Yes.
Yep. Great.
So if the conditions aren't complied with or they're breaching other rules,
Oh, yeah, got it.
then we can.
They can remove the exemption. Okay.
A noting provision could be to provide some guidance, prepare some guidance documentation too to help the application process.
Yeah.
We have proposed a later date for this coming into force.
Oh yeah, I saw that 6 months out.
And that's to give us time to develop those processes and guidance information.
So can I just get the radar on this? I can see where Pauline is. Erin,
No, I'm supportive of the staff position, I think, and with John's suggestion just then, I think it makes sense. Lionel's nodding at helping people.
Tyrone? Yep. Kelly?
Yep.
Yeah, and I am as well.
Pauline, 6.
I just think the numbers are too low.
Yeah, I'm happy with the recommendation.
All good?
Yep. God, we haven't even got to the hard ones yet. I know.
So we were going to, we've proposed a minor change, which is just to clarify that maximum limit applies at dog parks. We've got quite a few submitters saying, oh, the rule shouldn't apply, but we're like, that's actually one of the key places it needs to apply. So,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Agree. We've
Thank
heard
you.
a number of people saying dog parks are out of control. I don't go there.
So hang on. So if someone gets an exemption from all dogs, they can take.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they know what they're doing.
Yeah, so what we've asked
And if they
is
break the rules.
part of that application process that they indicate the likely places they're going to take their dogs. And we've heard from some of the dog companies that they wouldn't ever take those dogs to dog parks. But we know that other
ones do. Right.
riskier ones are taking them to dog parks. So a lot of the professional dog walkers take them places where they know they're not going to come across lots of members of the public or lots of other dogs. But we've also discovered that some may be taking them to places where dogs are prohibited or where there are limitations. So we're wanting them to clarify where they're taking them to make sure that it's safe.
So how will this be policed in terms of if a professional dog walker sees a non-professional dog walker with too many dogs in a dog park? Can they take photos of them, send it to you? You guys will know who they are, probably. Is that the way it works?
We're not talking a huge number of businesses.
No.
And they all sort of know each other.
You probably
That
already know them.
relationship stuff is important.
We've got a fair idea of our frequent flyers.
Okay, cool.
They try that, they'll just get thrown to the
Okay.
dogs.
We're on the home straight.
We had some
Cat walking business.
comments in relation to dog registration. So though we've spent a lot of time talking about the leashed and prohibited areas in public places, the policy itself actually covers a whole range of activities and things either legislation needs it to cover or which are helpful as a place to set out the council's policy on things. So in relation to those comments on dog registration, which just sets out the categories, and then the fees are set through the annual plan process, we are not proposing any changes in relation to what people said from what we've got. There was some submitters talked about dog welfare, so the policy has some sort of helpful advice and guidance for dog owners around some aspects of dog welfare, like dogs at events. And this
Being a policy or vital? It's common sense.
well, the policy itself is about our direction, and sometimes it's designed to provide helpful information for people. So it doesn't have to be in there at all, but we have other elements that suggest what our approach might be. And so a submitter suggested something about protecting dogs' paws during the heat. So we've drafted some words there, which I can.
Right, that.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
It's not a big one. Dogs at events, we've proposed a power for the manager of dog control services and management services to allow an overriding of leashed and prohibited rules if he's satisfied that all risks are managed, if there is an event that dogs are welcome to. So there's a pause marathon that happens, and that's near or on some areas. So we're saying that if we're satisfied those things, then we can allow people to breach the rules in those cases.
Right.
Yep.
And then there's the last section on page 45 is staff corrections. So when we go out for consultation, we do our best, but occasionally there are things that change. So when we went out for consultation, it was 2024, so we're proposing changing all the references in the name to 2025. We do need to do a little bit of quality controlling. There's a couple of duplicate numbers within the policy, so we'll fix those. There are 2 clause references that are out, we'll fix those. And what's that one? Another reference one that we'll fix. And then Paul has asked for a clarification about, so generally with bylaws we can regulate in our district, which is in the specified land of our district, for this particular bylaw, but for the reserves bylaw, for under the Reserves Act, we can manage land that is not in our district. So there are several reserves in Selwyn that we manage, and in those areas we'd like to prohibit dogs. And it's just noting that in here that dogs are prohibited, but we can't prohibit it with our bylaw because it can't regulate land outside our district. Does that make sense, or is that too confusing? It's just a noting provision that dogs aren't allowed in there under the Reserves Act.
Okay.
Not
So,
in
but
relation to our bylaw.
that one's simpler than, and it made no sense before, but dockland that sits
Yep.
within our district, does that come under our rules, or is that their own?
So the definition of public place in the Dog Control Act is really broad and includes any area open to the public. And historically, we have some agreements in place with DOC where we've included their land in our restrictions. And the easiest example of that is Godley Head.
And I'm picking they'd be pretty happy with most of what we're proposing, aren't they?
We haven't had any particular feedback.
We've got several trusts that wait and follow our lead on dog policy.
Follow your lead.
No.
No, we'll take that. No, take it. It's thin. It's thin.
That's fantastic.
27.
Sorry.
You're scratching now.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So they follow us on our general thrust around dog bylaws. They'll be supportive.
That's all that we had other than
So you're saying we're
reworks.
leader of the pack?
Right. I've noticed we've got Andrew sitting here, and I did send him off yesterday and asked him a question. We had a submitter who asked about whether we could use volunteers and reputable organisations with in our Reading to Dogs program, and I asked whether that was going to present any legal issues or challenges to us. Can you just come and have a quick chat to us about that? Because on the face of it, it seems sensible, but...
Yeah, I think Lionel's probably better to discuss it from an operational level because I think he sees it from a day-to-day basis. But I guess it's the issue with council using volunteers for anything. And I think there'd be that added issue with introducing dogs to the mix. I think would require some pretty severe waivers to be put in place to protect our liability.
Lionel, what can you say about it?
The actual time invested in Reading to Dogs is 2 hours a week on a Tuesday and a Thursday. 2 officers, 2 hours a week. All the officers' dogs that partake in the Reading to Dogs program are temperament tested by a dog behaviourist outside of Christchurch. So that's quite, from a business perspective, we wanted someone outside of Christchurch. With regards to the use of volunteers, I think from a organisational reputational enhancement program, it's great. Education program, I don't think most of the councillors will be aware of this, is actually trademarked to Christchurch City Council. It's a national program. We're the only council in New Zealand that offers Reading to Dogs and has both Dog Smart, which is the adult, and Dog Wise, which is its school talks. I don't want to see that
Diminished.
diminished or farmed out to a contractor or a volunteer. I think it's a really important aspect of animal management and providing the education.
It's a good positive profile for us as well, isn't it? Yeah, okay.
And relationship building.
Okay. What I'm happy with that. I don't require any additional information or anything on that. Can I just check with my panel members then where we're at, where we've landed? We've sort of reached the end of the track. What questions are outstanding, please?
We just might need to actually super duper clarify where we got to with the the paths in the urban parks. I think that was what it was. And do we agree that there's no issue, so don't bring in a new rule about that? Is that what we all agreed on?
Because one of the things we acknowledged, we had issues with formed paths, and it almost felt that by defining it, it all started to unravel and you created a hell of a lot more confusion, and we want to try and simplify it. So is it an option, staff, for us to leave the settings as they are with paths?
And that
Or,
is
well, can I get some clarity on what is the current setting on paths?
under effective control.
It's variable. There is no setting on paths. There is setting on specific named pieces of land, which may include paths.
Okay, so
Yeah, we were going for consistency.
So what happens if we remove that entire one with paths?
That's something that the panel can do if it chooses to do. We did get a lot of support. So there's some complexity to this in that we asked the question around footpaths, shared paths and formed tracks. The sticking point for many people seems to be formed tracks. When we look at the numbers that were higher in opposition, once we take out some of the comments from people saying that's fine but not on formed tracks, or that's fine but not a short leash, or I don't want to leash my dog in all green spaces, which is how some people interpreted the proposal, or some people thought that we were requiring a short leash full stop or banning retractable leads. So once we take out some of the confusion, it wasn't as strong a no response. And in fact, there are a lot of submitters that supported it, and there are a lot of people, and remember we had 80% of submitters were dog owners saying that they support it so that dogs are under good control in those spaces that lots of people use. There were, if you would like to consider it, some suggestions that staff had made to adjust that so that it was a bit more flexible, or if you want to just remove it completely, that's your prerogative.
I think removing completely would be actually, I think that's what the staff advice is anyway.
Well, that's what I...
It's coming back to, are we trying to fix a problem that does not exist? And under effective control means under effective control. And you could have your dog on a leash and it's still not under control.
And for some, yeah.
I think it just creates more clarity. Yes, anyway.
Aaron, Tyron, Kelly? Where are you heading? Where are you tracking? Do you want to park it for now? Oh, look, I'm going to suggest we take a brief adjournment. Thank you to staff who have been here with us today. I'm really grateful for your time because it's been a long afternoon. I'm going to ask us just to break for 10 minutes and then we're going to close it off for today and get some clarity on what happens next and when. If we can do that, please.
Just in case we lose the park staff at this point, I'm okay with what you guys are suggesting around the effective control in all parks, that kind of thing. Yeah,
which is the current setting.
Yeah. As long as we endeavour to do the work to find parks, spaces, reserves, whatever, in each ward that are dog-free, that people who have an aversion to dogs, even the friendliest dog in the world still freaks them out, they can go to a space and enjoy a space.
We'd have to get staff advice on that.
Get staff advice on that. Is that possible, please?
We'd have to reconsult.
Would have to reconsult.
New prohibited areas in.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're suggesting, is having prohibited areas.
Okay, maybe that's a question
Oh,
for
flip.
I know.
Is it?
It's on the status quo.
Someone should have probably asked me for the dumb suggestions before we consulted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
but anyway, would you support the current settings for under effective control on?
So
Yeah, I
if you,
would, but we need to do the work to, because it's a genuine complaint. It's raised. People, I think, need green spaces that have no dogs.
well, look, we can note that for the next review, and a piece of work could be done on that because it was. I mean, if we don't want to have to go out and consult.
A review.
Pardon?
I don't get why it needs a
Because
reconsult.
council process is
But
very
Aaron,
dogmatic.
Aaron, we had advice from staff that the current setting is.
Sorry, I was just listening to his dogma.
Very good. We've had staff from advice that the current setting, there's no problem with it.
Yeah.
So why are we bringing in further restriction when there's no problem?
So what is the
Yeah, and
unintended?
I agree with that, but you can. I believe we can make our environment better. By
Yes, I know, but that's
going
another
further.
thing
Yeah,
over here, but we
it's
can't connect that with what
Yeah.
we're doing now.
can't we just add a noting provision to look at it next time? I mean, you make a good point.
Yeah.
Yes, we
but-
can, but
Yeah, I
can
think
we
you make it-
focus on this now?
Okay, so focusing on this for now.
Do we have
With what's
consensus?
fresh in my mind is the comments that Al Hardy's made around the current urban green spaces and under effective control operates. So to my mind, that says we don't even need leashing on a path. And if we therefore make it under effective control for the whole path, including for the whole park, then we don't get down into the issues of trying to define what a pathway is, because we had an issue about defining a pathway, a footpath, a shared path, a form path, a form track. We were, we were all over, we were going all over the place with that, and we felt that there was a lot of confusion. So if you just leave it at the current policy settings and you remove that proposal, have we got an effective dog law policy? Or have we got a big chunk missing?
No, that depends on a number of things. But if you do that, then we keep with confusion and inconsistency where you've got to check the rules for every park to know what the rules are. Because some are leashed and some aren't, and they vary park by park. And we also got submissions about cyclists on paths and interactions, and
Yeah,
high
look, my
use
only
paths.
comment with that is it's a shared path and they're expected to be shared, and people have got to learn to live with each other and take onus and responsibility to operate in and around any of the dangers that are on the path.
Wouldn't a map solve those
Yes.
issues?
I don't think we're going to solve it right now. I think we've done really well, and if that's the main outlier that we've got at the end of this, yeah, can I just clarify then, what are the outliers that we've got? What do we still need to decide on, and what is the pathway for us to do that, please?
I think we ended up settled on the sports fields.
Yeah.
rule.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
So I think it was just leashing in green space paths. A little bit the central city, Raora Park and Latimer Square. There was no conclusion on what to do with that.
I think we
And-
reached agreement on Latimer Square, didn't we? Yeah, just But Aurora Park, we haven't. We're just going to park that one.
So can you?
Okay, Tyrone? Yep. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep the leashing requirement on Latimer. We've all agreed on that. But the issue is, bearing in mind, we've got lots more people coming into the city, people popping home at lunchtime to let their dog out for a little walk at a park, which is right in front of their house. They haven't got time to go off to the Loop or to the Hagley Park. Do we want to lift the leashing requirement on Aurora Park? And that's a yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that because it supports, inner
By-
city living. Yeah.
Yeah, in a city living.
Yeah, no, I'm the same now.
Yep, I'm happy.
Yep, and I'm happy. There we are.
Okay, so we've got under effective control in Raora Park, keeping the leash requirement at Latimer Square. The Avon Loop, we'll assume that's going to be lifted and linked to the Otago Avon River Corridor. And so the OIRC was the other one that we hadn't, I'm not sure that the panel had agreed on the settings for the
No,
Otago Avon River
so we're going to
Corridor.
park OARC and we're going to park the leashing, the greens. Well, I think it ties into where we're going to land with leashing and green spaces. I think we just need to spend a bit more time on it, but not today.
No, it doesn't have to because RRZ is specific.
Okay,
Mm,
okay.
I'm going to suggest that because it's got all three. Got all three. Footpath.
Yeah. Kelly?
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and access to the river via the landings. only.
Sorry,
Can I just keep the landing separate for the moment?
Okay.
sorry, I've lost what are you agreeing to? What in particular? The proposal or changing it?
What about the prohibited
It was
areas?
Except
well,
for the prohibited.
it was
So that then becomes
well
prohibited
supported in
leashed.
submissions.
No, it doesn't.
Prohibited effective control.
Prohibitive effective control.
So, but there's some areas prohibited.
Well, that's a
and
whole new
some-
category because it wasn't on the picture.
The picture is the current rules, not the proposed
Okay.
things. So this is what we had proposed. Dogs are prohibited in and around the riverbank and wetland areas, and in any planted ecological restoration or long grass areas to protect wildlife and habitat restoration. Dogs must be leashed on pathways, including stop banks and landings, and under effective control in mowed grass areas.
Okay, so Aaron,
So
you
we were
wanted
wanting to move the
So-
leashed on pathways.
effective control everywhere except where it's
It's
prohibited,
prohibited.
and leashed on the landings.
So you're not wanting to leash on pathways.
No.
The city to sea pathway is a
Shared
busy pathway that we would have specifically requested leashing on.
Well, you see, I have a different. I think it's better to not leash in those places. I think leashes are dangerous, and they do produce anxiety in the dogs as well. So I agree with you. Effective control.
Because they
That's
you
what
can't
your
control
dog
them.
wants, and that's fine. And you can. You don't have to.
Look, I think we've done really well to get as far as we've got. My preference today is to just leave OARC for a little bit to mull it over a bit, and the leashing and the green space paths.
Yeah,
So
I've got
there with
a
the-
couple of reservations about the city to sea pathway, given how busy it's going to be. Because you need dogs leashed in, say, the pathway going out to Sumner. Because of the interaction here. So yeah, maybe
That's
we
near
should
a
talk
road.
about that a bit
Alongside
further.
That's
road.
near a road.
Yeah. So that is covered by the general requirement around leashing on
You gotta
footpaths.
ask
as
Because
well.
I think we're all agreed on the general requirement by roads.
That got good support in submissions as well.
City to sea pathway is a
We
separate path.
we could.
Bring back some
No.
advice on that then.
I think Hagley Park is, well, it's got all three paths. It's got a footpath, it's got a shared path, and in between there are formed tracks. If
And
you,
have we got a problem?
no problem.
But
And
that-
we've got all three there.
We currently have a leashing requirement on
That's-
paths in Hagley.
Just the understanding, so you mean that at the moment? they're
At
all
the
leashed?
moment, so what we try to do is take the footprint that we've known has worked in Hagley and impose that across the whole city because we know it works in all our green spaces.
So that's leashing on pathways.
So that,
Pauline, that would mean that the paths in there, same as Hagley Park, would be leashed. Because the suggestion is that that will be as busy as Hagley Park.
Yes, but
that's not what else is.
no, the residential red zone is a different area, and it's a bigger. I don't know. It's a much bigger expanse, and the staff say there's no problem.
That's
What are you
not
trying to
what
say?
Zane said, the team leader from the red zone. In the red zone, he gave you the stats on attacks and impacts on wildlife.
Proof it was dogs.
It's a model for the red zone that aligns with the management of that site and the regeneration plan for it.
Yeah, but the prohibited areas protect that. Yeah.
That probably needs more discussion.
I think it needs a bit more discussion. I'm a
Yeah,
bit
if
confused.
we're
I
gonna
think we've gone
split
around in
them
circles
out.
with it. Can I raise another one that I'm a little bit confused about as well? So the current policy setting is leashed on paths in Hagley Park.
Yes.
Yep. The comments that the parks team have said is under effective control is good enough. So if we were to go to an under effective control in Hagley Park, can we do that, or do we have to reconsult on it?
Well, hang on, we've been trying to not fix what's not broken. Lionel said was Hagley Park works really well.
As it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think we should miss it.
Okay.
We
It
do
doesn't
have
mean we necessarily
some.
have to transpose that to the red zone.
And we don't need to further define on paths to short leash.
No, that's not a.
Not doing short
That's
and
not a
long leash.
short. That is a short leash currently in Hagley Park.
Can we take out the reference to short?
For some context, I think some of the feedback that we got around short leashes being harmful were when only short leashes are used and they're always used. That's not what the short leash on pathways proposal is. And some submitters also thought that we were banning retractable leads or longer leads. That's not what the proposal is. It was a short leash on those paths because they're busy and because they're narrow. That was the only reason for the short leash, was good control. And in other places, have your dog on a longer leash, or if it's appropriate, have your dog under effective control. And one of the reasons that we thought it was a good idea to ask the public how they were feeling about pathways is partly because of the increase in dogs, but also because of the increase in many of our footpaths becoming shared paths. They're used for wheeled devices now in ways that they weren't 10 years ago. We've got a massive increase in scooters, a big increase in bikes, electric scooters, kids on balance bikes, all those sorts of things have all changed, and that's why we wanted to ask the public what they thought. And we got views on both sides.
Okay, well, I'd still like to just park that out at the moment because we haven't quite landed where we need to. And I'd also like staff advice on if we were to accept your recommendation, can we carve off the formed track off it? What does that look like?
We can. It would be good to talk about where formed tracks are because many of them are currently leashed. So for example,
my brain can't take that in today.
No.
I've done my dash today.
Because you'd have to talk about the areas that don't currently have a requirement. Where you've got a requirement to leash, there's a reason for that. We're talking about the other ones that we want to put a blanket rule over them, saying
Yes.
leash on the track and not next to it. So obviously it wouldn't include those bits that have
I'm
already
not
got a
saying that it would include it. I'm saying that many of our formed tracks are in regional park areas. Not all of them, but many of them are. So many of them
Okay,
are
so
already
we're
leashed. So
talking urban here, though.
one of the risks that we identified was that people might think that we were proposing more of a change than we are because they haven't understood the
People
current
are
rules.
thinking that.
No, but we're talking urban. When we
Okay,
talk about
so
this issue.
Stormwater
given where
basins
we
too.
are and the confusion that is now apparent,
Yes.
what's next?
Might need some diagrams.
Please.
That's all today. I think we've resolved everything except the leashing and green space areas, and the Otakura River corridor settings.
And
That's my notes. On
Coastal,
where
where do we land on your pathway?
The pathways within the. Do you mean the
No, the
City
one
of
over
Sea or the?
on Banks
Oh,
Peninsula,
sorry,
Diamond Harbour. I don't think we'd quite landed on that one yet.
Oh, sorry.
But so those three key. Except that it's currently leashed.
It's currently prohibited. We've proposed changing it to leashed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just mindful of the comments. Okay, so those are the three things that are outstanding. If we're adjourning the hearing today, when am I adjourning it to?
The 27th of March.
At what time? Sorry?
So what we were hoping to bring back to you from decisions you've made today is a worked up version of the policy and bylaw with the changes reflected. And you've asked for new work in a number of areas for us to come back to you. I will go through my notes and bring a list, maybe document that for you. Is
Yes,
that
please.
helpful?
And on the areas that we've obviously got some confusion when it comes to drafting the bylaw and the policy, can you present us with options?
Yes.
Please. And then that will help us with our decision making. We'll have it clear in front of us. It's either A or B. And then we can go from there for the 27th.
Great.
Anything else? It's been a really long day. Thank you so much for everybody who's been in the room today. It's been a great process. So we're adjourned until the 27th of March at 11 a.m. Thank you very much.